Hello, everybody. Welcome. Please give me a thumbs up if the audio is great. And YouTube Live is also on. Great. Let's get started. Tesla is up 3%. Overall markets rising in the afternoon. Dow Jones up 0.3, Nasdaq up 0.7%, S&P 500 up 0.5%. All mega tech stocks are up. Microsoft, Nvidia, Google, Meta up 1%. Apple about the same. Financial stocks are down. It's a risk on kind of day. Consumer defensive stocks are down. Energy, oil stocks are down. GME, AMC have been rising substantially in the last couple of days, causing some concern around the health of the financial markets. Meme stocks are back. Google had its developer conference event today. I/O. Let's see if there's any headlines there. Google stock is up 0.9%, $2.1 trillion valuation, PE ratio of 27. Near all-time highs. When Omar joins, we can dig into that a little bit. I see Bradford in the audience if he wants to come up and maybe talk about financials, Q1 financials, Q2 expectations, 2024 expectations. We can dig into that while the room is all quiet still. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. This is Pennington. Let's see with what's new with Sawyer. Polestar 2 EV is built in China and imported to the US. Will be interesting to see how Geely, who owns Volvo and Polestar, responds to this new 100% EV tariff. President Joe Biden is raising the tariff rate on electric vehicles imported from China from 25% to 100% beginning this year. The tariff rate for lithium-ion batteries from China used in EVs will increase from 7.5% to 25%. Wow. Interesting. That will obviously have some impact on Tesla's margins for the Model 3 to the extent that they can't change it by the time these tariffs kick in. Sawyer is posting messages, screenshots of DMs is getting after Tesla introduced 0.99% APR for the Model Y. Seems to be some take for the offer, but obviously this is all anecdotal evidence. So we'll see what that means when the Q2 numbers are announced. In the meantime, I'm keeping an eye on what Troy Tesla publishes. Cybertruck spotted in Rome, Italy. Sawyer says. So Cybertruck is making its rounds across the world. Sawyer also posted a Barron's article that says Tesla should be impacted the least by Biden administration's increased tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. So let's look into this a little bit. So long as they don't spark a backlash among Chinese officials. It's a paid article and I have a subscription to Barron's, so we're gonna skip that one. Tesla has filed for regulatory approval of the new Model 3 Performance in China. Okay. FAA to start a new environmental review for Florida SpaceX Starship launches. All right. Tesla has been sued by an environmental nonprofit that accused the company of violating the federal Clean Air Act hundreds of times by letting its Fremont, California plant emit harmful pollutants. Interesting. That's a Reuters article. Elon obviously is not the biggest fan of Reuters. Let's take a quick look at this article. Tesla has been sued by an environmental nonprofit that accused Elon Musk's EV company of violating the federal Clean Air Act hundreds of times by letting its Fremont, California plant emit harmful pollutants. In a complaint filed on Monday, the Environmental Democracy Project said Tesla has since January 2021 exposed nearby residents and workers to excessive nitrogen oxides, arsenic, cadmium, and other harmful chemicals, mainly through its paint shop operations. The nonprofit wants an injunction to halt excess pollution, plus civil fines of up to $121,000 per day per violation of the Clean Air Act. Tesla did not immediately respond on Tuesday to requests for comment. The lawsuit filed federal court in San Francisco adds the pressure on Tesla to improve air quality surrounding the Fremont plant, its main U.S. factory. On May 2, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District said it wanted an independent hearing board to order Tesla to reduce harmful emissions from its paint shop operations. It said that Tesla's emissions abatement system breaks down repeatedly, and the automaker has since 2019 racked up 112 notices of violation, each accounting for as much as 750 pounds of illegal air pollution. In February, Tesla agreed to pay $1.5 million to settle a lawsuit by 25 California counties that claimed it had mishandled hazardous waste at locations across the state. The Environmental Democracy Project said it has authority to file a citizen lawsuit under the Clean Air Act because Tesla has violated or in violation of conditions imposed by operating permits for major source of pollution. Lawyers for the nonprofit do not immediately respond to requests for additional comments. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak. Sawyer also says battery storage is about to overtake global capacity of pumped hydro. Okay. We also got news last night that 9,800 Teslas were insured in China last week. This is lower than what Troy was estimating, but I think many bulls estimated. So Most of that was Model Y, a little bit of it is Model 3, but Tesla seems to be challenged in China quite a bit lately. Kia unveiled the Refresh EV6, 4% more range, 84 kilowatt-hour battery, up from 77, 350 kilowatt fast charging, redesigned steering wheel with fingerprint reader to allow registered drivers to start the EV with no key, curved digital instrument cluster and infotainment display, digital rear view mirror and improved head-up display, modified dampers to improve ride comfort, strengthened body to improve safety, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. More details about the North American version will be released in a few weeks. Deliveries in the US are expected to start in late 2024. But this is something between Model 3 and Model Y. I actually saw the EV6. It looks nice, but it's a little cramped inside, to be honest with you. Like it's Model Y is much better, obviously, than this vehicle. Bradford, how are you?
Doing good. Yeah, thinking about Model Y. You have parts showing up online, of which we will not speak of, Model Y in China, and you think about an updated Model Y that could. I'm wondering like what ends up happening in Europe when if it gets changed over in China. I think part of the weakness we're seeing in from Tesla Shanghai is just that Giga Berlin has come online and is producing a good number of Model Y now, and so you don't really need to ship Model Y from China. I mean, from China to Europe. But I'm curious to see like if it starts in Shanghai, yeah, how quickly does Berlin follow suit? And I'm guessing like the US might be last, but I'm wondering how that plays out, and curious how what Omar thinks about that.
Omar, welcome. Do you have a response for Bradford?
Sorry, I was spaced out. What did he ask?
New Model Y parts showing up in China.
Shut your mouth about a new Model Y until the day it goes on the page, okay? I don't want to hear one word about that new Model Y until it's for sale.
Do you want to talk about the current Model Y?
Well, it's the same Model Y we know and love, now for a great price with 0.99% financing. And it's obviously going to be updated to have the same things the Model 3 has. I think that's obvious to everybody. But I'm thinking it's probably more of a Q4, Q1 thing.
So I got a question for you, Yaman. Have you done a test drive in the updated Model 3?
You know, I am. I mean, is that really in the stores yet? I guess I can call the Austin store, see if they have it. But I'm always looking for opportunities to go up there. It's kind of like 10 miles north of Austin, downtown. So every now and then I go up there with a friend of mine, show them a model, usually a Model S or an X, and show them FSD. It's always a good time. And then we grab a bite and then come back. But yeah, if they have the new Model 3, I would love to test it. I haven't yet. Have you?
Yeah, I got to see I got to be in an early one that came to Indianapolis, and I'd highly recommend it. People ask around their local Tesla center, see if they're available for a test drive. What blew me away was not necessarily the seats are different than like a S or X seat. They are nicer than like the old Model 3. They feel bigger, the seats do. But what blew me away is like how quiet and smooth it was. I literally felt like I had noise canceling headphones on while I was in the car. It was just so quiet compared to like my Model Y.
Yeah, thank you. When did you do this test drive?
Oh, this was a long time ago. I feel like it was like January or something like that.
Yeah, I can't wait to test it. I mean, I've seen it in the wild actually. So I'm guessing the Austin store has it. So next time I go, which should be sometime this week, I'll give it a shot.
What
Check
really
it out.
what really surprised me is uh just my reaction to it. It just felt like so much nicer than the standard Model 3. And I could see why people in Europe were reacting to it positively. And before experiencing it myself, I just thought, that's superficial. These are, Mercedes Benz, Beamer, and Audi people, they have their biases or whatever. But I couldn't like hide the grin on my face when I was in it.
Yeah, the new Model 3 is great, but the old Model 3 was also great. And to the extent that there are things that you miss in the old Model 3, you can get a current Model Y and enjoy those things. There you go, Omar. I tried to spin it for you. Amy, I saw your request to speak, but for some reason it didn't work. So instead, I sent you an invite to speak. Sometimes that works better. Let's try that. Mr. Priggles, go ahead.
Sorry, I must have butt dialed the space. No comment at this time.
Jimmy the Other, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to talk a little bit about the price cuts. These price cuts are now available in other countries. For example, in the Middle East, the price cuts from the German-produced Teslas are now available on the websites there locally. Let's not forget that in 2023 September, Elon met with a number of Middle Eastern leaders to talk about building EV factories. And according to new rumors, he will eventually visit these countries again to discuss a EV factory in Saudi Arabia, a Tesla factory maybe in Turkey, and so on and so forth. So that is interesting. Thank you.
Habib, how are you?
Hey everybody, how you guys doing?
Good. Did you sell your Taycan yet?
Nope, but I did order a 0.9% or 0.99% Y.
Nice. So does that mean you're going to sell it?
The Model Y?
No, the Taycan.
No, I'm not going to sell the Taycan.
You don't upgrade
All
to the
right.
new model with NACS?
I'm not sure if I'm going to update the Porsche just yet, to be honest. You guys heard me talk about it. I mean, it has left a lot of, some features on the interior aren't as good as the Tesla and the Tesla experience. The PCM, the whole Porsche infotainment system is just terrible. So I'm not sure if I'm going to dole out all that money to upgrade it, but I'm going to keep mine around for the time being. The new Model Y price point, though, is phenomenal. I'm loving it. I think there's a lot of action going on.
Jimmy, what do you think about this strategy change by Tesla from giving new inventory discounts to offering low APR financing instead?
Well, it makes a lot of sense. Leasing options are very important. This is just a way to compete with the American automakers because a lot of them cannot do this anymore. Their balance sheets are filled with basically bad loans and these leasing options. Their APRs are much higher. They can't refinance. They can't work with banks and banking partners to get new credit notes to offer something like this. It's a combination of lack of cash. And furthermore, banks are not as willing to lend to these large automakers like Ford and GM. When you look at revenue, Tesla insurance is something that really blows away any of these other automakers. It's making several dollars per kilometer in just this insurance idea. So leasing as an opportunity is important. Now, many companies have abused leasing on their balance sheets, for example, BMW and others, because essentially they have become financing companies, and they hold all this debt from the consumer side. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and people just don't pay it off. But one of the things is telematics. When Tesla has good information on your driving abilities, on your ability to repay, on your overall trustworthiness, not only will it be one car, but if you choose to get future cars from Tesla, they will have knowledge about your consistency in repayment, your driving abilities, and it could one day lead to having zero APR financing for cars if if Tesla Insurance thinks that you're a good customer, good driver. This is really important for telematics because it should be able to suggest if you are credit worthy to an automotive company. In contrast, GM and Ford had to rely on a number of third parties to tell them the same information. Thank you.
Do you think Tesla will hold this debt that it's going to take on to offer the low APR financing on its balance sheet, or do you think Tesla will securitize it, or how do you think the balance sheet impact?
Yeah,
how do you
that's a
think about the balance
complicated
sheet
one.
impact?
Typically you would securitize it. BMW has huge off-balance sheet securitization from this stuff. But it's been going on for decades, and they just keep repackaging it, refinancing. It's also helpful that they're in Europe, and they have very cheap loans that they can get over there, because essentially it's kind of like state-backed. They're asking the local governments to essentially force banks to give them these loans, which really banks shouldn't be doing, to be honest. But anyway, Tesla's in a different position. My view is this: for the time being, probably not, because the types of people who are going to be buying these Teslas are not the same types of people who are buying low APR BMWs. And again, data is super important here. It could be a way to upsell future products, like subscriptions, for example, via Tesla. The BMW Mercedes situation is completely different. With very low interest rate loans historically in many countries, like in Greece, people simply didn't pay off their loans. It's a big cause for different financial recessions was the automotive bad loans in these countries. Tesla doesn't have anything like that. It has almost no bad debt, tons of cash. So I think they probably won't, because it's not necessary.
Well,
And when you
Tesla
start
didn't have
securitizing,
Tesla doesn't have bad debt because it didn't offer
doesn't have
leasing
it.
before. It just started offering
Securitization is
leasing. So
only necessary.
I'm going to ask Bradford as well. Bradford, how do you think about the balance sheet impact of Tesla's new low APR financing offer?
I don't have an opinion on this. I'm listening to you all.
Okay. Yeah, if Matt Smith wants to come up, I know you guys work closely, and he does maybe the more minute or the detailed financial modeling side of things. So he's welcome to request to speak and talk about these things too.
I was loving hearing Jimmy nerd out on this instead of waxing poetically as Jimmy likes to do.
You mean
Yeah,
telematics?
well, but the thing is, like, Jimmy sometimes goes on, and I have to kind of cut it, because especially when he says something wrong, like or maybe not wrong factually, but misleading, like, Tesla doesn't have obviously Tesla doesn't have bad debts because you're paying cash or credit, and Tesla takes the cash from the bank, of your credit card, or credit financing company, because they haven't done these. They just started these low financing offers now. There's going to be some bad debt on Tesla's AR too going forward, as this financing arm grows. But yeah, I guess maybe Tesla will provide more color on the next earnings call about this.
Well, why do you think there'll be bad debt? Because Tesla can repo the cars pretty easy. Teslas don't depreciate. there's a deposit on the financing, whether you do financing or lease. Why do you think there would be bad debt that gets created?
So you said they can repo it easy, and what are the second and third points you made?
Well, Teslas don't depreciate. Yeah. And I forgot the third one.
Yeah. Well, it's like, why do you say it's easy to repo? Is that because Tesla knows where the cars are?
Yeah, maybe it's ignorant on my part, but they know where the cars are.
Right. I mean, I guess
They'll
like
just turn on FSD unsupervised, get the car.
right, exactly. I mean, the thing is, like, first, obviously you can't do that, right? And secondly, um, there's always hair about these things. Like, not everybody wants to be in the repo business. Sometimes people pull out their guns against the repo truck drivers. I mean, there are YouTube channels that are dedicated to this topic, and literally, like, you go house by house with the repo driver and see what they go through. There are laws around, whether you're able to access somebody's private property. So it's not as easy. It's just that, anytime you kind of build a financing business like this, you're going to have some bad debt. That's just part of, having a financing business. Any bank has bad debt. Ford, GM, others. I mean, you can make the argument that Tesla's bad debt will probably be lower than others because Tesla customers generally have higher credit scores, but it's not going to be zero. Bradford and then Jimmy.
What if we're at a low for used car values for Tesla? Then why would there be bad debt?
What about what? Say it again.
What if we're near a low for used car values for Tesla? So then, if prices would be starting to increase, then there wouldn't be bad debts from that. Just push them back a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes theoretical sense, but again, in real world, things are like, even if the resale value of an asset is higher than before, they may still be underwater for various reasons. They may have stopped paying for various reasons. So, obviously, in an macroeconomic backdrop, like where used values are high or sustained, then all else equal, everybody's bad debt would be lower. But I'm just kind of making a point that this is something we have to now, going forward, think about the financing arm, just like Ford and GM have. Theirs are like, their balance sheets are like bank balance sheets. Their financing arms, leasing arms are, we're talking tens of billions of dollars of debt. Tesla is only now kind of dipping their toes in this business, and we'll see if they decide to grow it. We'll see where it goes from here. But it's not. This is not going to be material for the next few quarters. We're talking maybe a few years out. Jimmy?
Yeah, maybe for the audience, we should explain how this kind of works. So when Ford has to repossess a car, they actually take no hit because they've already sold the debt as an asset-backed security to investors. So people who are not aware of that, just be aware that every 6 months or so, Ford markets these asset-backed securities to investors. They call them prime ABS, or asset-backed security. So for example, their most recent offering, I believe, was in February, if I'm not mistaken, and it was about 1.1 billion in prime auto loan asset-backed securities. And the rate was on a Class B note, so it's a subordinated note, of 4.5%, compared to last year, the year before, 5.75%. So it's quite high, all things considered. Secondly, this is super important. Half of the ABS goes not to consumers, it goes to the dealers. So it's in a very different situation from Tesla. When dealers cars, they have to have this distributor note from Ford. Essentially, Ford financially backs them. They give this loan to a dealer, obviously with interest, and then those cars are then delivered. The dealer must sell those cars. They have to sell out. And if they can't sell out, they have to return some of the cars. But they usually cannot return all the cars. So essentially, they're taking a loan from Ford to sell these cars, and they have to pay back this loan with interest by selling cars. That makes sense. That's very clear. Tesla, again, is in a very different situation because, for all those who may not be aware, there are no Tesla dealers. They sell the cars directly. So there's two very different things going on. If there's no ABS, Tesla doesn't have to go to the market and let the market decide what the APR is. If Tesla can do it directly, right, to you, Brad, for example, they would know more about your credit history. They could use more tech to figure out what kind of consumer you are, especially if you buy previous Teslas. So I think this is a very good pilot program. In the future, the data will tell them through their insurance side whether or not Brad deserves less than 1%, maybe more than 1%. So eventually it'll be dynamic. Thank you.
Habib.
Jimmy, the asset-backed security sale of leased vehicles, would that apply to Tesla also, in the sense that because they're not offering you the purchaser or the leasee the right to buy the vehicle, essentially, since Tesla owns the vehicle still, don't they have a benefit because their asset-backed security, they actually still own the asset themselves?
Oh, asset-backed security, it's just a type of security. It's not related to the generic, it is backed by assets. You are correct that when they do make this loan on the balance sheet, it is technically backed by the assets of Tesla. But ABS is a certain kind of security, has nothing to do with really the generic, it is backed by assets. It's just a way of saying, it's a financial term that is legal term. So when they go to the market, they're called prime ABS, right? Prime asset-backed securities. And that is a type of note that they have to then sell to investors. They go on road shows, again, because these companies are huge, essentially banks. They're very successful in that. Thank you.
Okay. Omar?
Yeah, there's no avoiding bad loans. They're kind of just a fact of life. So Tesla goes out, they make a loan to Habib, and they say, okay, Habib, you look like a great guy. You want to borrow this money from us? Sure. And next thing you know, Habib has an emergency in the family or he loses his job. I'm not saying that's going to happen to him. He's a doctor, whatever. I'm just giving an example. He loses his job. He can't pay his loans. His loans become delinquent, right? So right now, auto loan delinquencies are creeping up. It's, I think, like 2.8%. So it's not a huge amount, but a certain number of people are not going to pay their loan on time. Some people, will just fail to be able to pay their loan at all. And the interest you make on the loans that do pay needs to be able to cover the losses on the loans that don't pay. So if you have a financing rate like this, then you may run into a situation where the interest doesn't cover the losses depending on a lot of factors, for example, macroeconomic trends. If you have a situation where there's mass unemployment, then your auto loan delinquencies could be quite a bit higher than we expect. Obviously in 2008, for example, you saw just a broad-based freeze of the credit market just based on, delinquencies on any kind of loan, whether it's a mortgage or an auto loan, spiking up. So even if you want to sort of sell this as an asset-backed security, the risk still needs to be priced in. So you can't just say, okay, well, there's a bunch of bad loans in here, but I'm going to, just package it up and sell it as an asset, because they're going to look at the portfolio of loans and they're going to look at Tesla and say, okay, there's the risk of Tesla vehicles, depreciating if they have further price cuts. We're going to have to make sure that we don't lose money on this. The collateral backs it up, and that insured against the risk of the buyers defaulting. And all of that ultimately gets priced in, even if you decide to offload the loans to somebody else. So they would be paying you less commensurate with that level of risk. And what that level of risk is actually going to be, we can only kind of speculate. We have a pretty good idea, but it depends a lot on what happens in the economy, what happens to the buyers, a lot of factors you can predict.
Habib.
So, if I understand correctly between Omar and Jimmy, what you guys just explained, isn't this the same thing as what they did with mortgage securities and how they sell mortgage securities based on different ratings to other banks?
Yeah, to an extent. Okay, well, first off, the assets are different, right? Number two, the underwriting is slightly different. If anything, auto loans are much more risky than mortgages because there's no Fannie and Freddie, right? Unless you believe that GM and Ford are essentially government backed. So therefore, the rates are higher. The rates were quite low with the mortgage loans back in the day. Number two, the maturity length is very different. So, for example, one of the largest one of the largest mortgage funds is called PIMCO Income Fund. PIMCO is one of the largest fixed income funds out there, and so essentially they're helping these underwriters like Citigroup and others. They take those assets, they put them in their own portfolio for people like Brad, because he's old, to make dividend income out of, and their investments long term for his portfolio. Very different. PIMCO Income Fund does not go into the automotive market and buy prime ABS from Ford. It does get mortgages. Why? Mortgages not only are backed by Fannie and Freddie, but the Treasury writes a lot of reports about it. It's heavily scrutinized, not the same as autos, very poorly scrutinized. And this is really important. The most important aspect about this is the credit ratings are different. Obviously, mortgages had a AA or AAA, depending on the type of mortgage. So it's not the maturity length here, the mortgage, the credit rating itself. And most of GM or Ford's notes are Class B notes, meaning that essentially they are corporate credit at the B level. They're very risky, right? Tesla is not in the same situation. Doesn't have an underwriter, doesn't have to securitize it. It's going to use tech and data, telematics to understand the credit rating of someone like Brad. The reason why Ford and GM have to do this is because they don't have a lot of information about Brad. They make a lot of bad loans. Their credit department, its business is to get as many of these things, bundle it together, and sell it on the market. Their business is not to scrutinize people like Brad carefully, and so they make better loan decisions. No, it's to figure out how to bundle it together as much as possible. So it's kind of like flipping burgers. You may not look at all of them. Some of them may not be good, but you want to flip as many as possible. That is the logic of the automotive loan industry.
Jimmy, so are you saying Tesla is not going to securitize these loans?
I don't think so. I think it's a pilot program.
Okay. So how does your hypothesis that Tesla has better telematics played out so far in the insurance business?
Well, it has insurance.
Right, but the insurance business isn't profitable, right? And it's not growing.
Well, I think you need economies of scale. It's tough. Once you have tens of millions of people using Tesla insurance, it becomes very profitable. In fact, insurance is one of the most profitable. But one of the reasons why insurance is profitable in America, and of course Brad would know this.
So then let me kind of push back a little bit. How does Tesla have more information on, let's say, Habib than legacy automakers do?
Right. So Ford and GM, their telematics data is not as good.
Yeah, but the telematics data has nothing to do with your payment history, credit score. It may be helpful for insurance.
Okay, so we're talking about insurance, or we're talking about payments?
Well, we're talking payments, right? We're talking financing, leasing. But you've made the argument that Tesla has better. Excuse me. You made the argument many times that Tesla has better telematics, and yet the insurance business hasn't really played out profitably. It hasn't really turned into this, amazing business that Tesla, because of all the telematics advantage over the last, they've been trying for 3+ years now. So how is that going to play out for the financing business when it's on the surface level, at least? Maybe you can't convince me otherwise, but on the surface
level.
Can
I ask you a question? Do you think FICO scores are accurate?
Yeah, I'm not interested in people interrupting me. You'd see.
Jimmy, I had a question about why you think Tesla insurance would become profitable when it's pretty unprofitable right now. Like if you look at some of the loss ratios by state, some of the states, they're completely mispricing the insurance risk by like 30 to 40%.
Can you ask that again, you see?
Yeah, my question was about loss ratios. So if Tesla has all this data, why are they mispricing insurance risk right now? Like if you look at the loss ratios by state, some of that data is public. You can see that some states Tesla has 130 to 145% loss ratios on their insurance.
Jimmy?
Okay, so who do I respond to right now? You or the new one?
You'd say.
What? You see? Is that the guy? Oh, right. That's his name, Stephen Yuzi. Sorry, I didn't see the last part. Well, it equalizes out. Insurance is always like that. One of the very first insurance companies, Scottish Widows, the loss rate in some areas of Scotland was very high during, for example, different issues, different political problems. But insurance is a long game. It takes a portfolio interest in 20 to 40 years. So it over time equalizes. So I wouldn't worry about the short-term data. Insurance, if anything, any industry in the world is about long-term returns to the mean. So I wouldn't worry about that data too much.
Yeah, I can see you two disagrees with you, and I disagree with you too. And also, like, insurance is not always long term. Auto loans are obviously more shorter term than life insurance. Property casualty is shorter term, reprices more frequently than other forms of insurance. So I think you're making a lot of claims that are just not true.
I think an actuary would agree with me if they were up here, that I'm saying perfectly normal things.
Okay. Bradford and then David Katz.
Yeah, my question actually for Stephen, because auto insurance was just brutal last year. We invest in Lemonade, and they tried to increase auto rates, and the state of California refused. They did this in homeowners insurance too. Like auto loss ratios were terrible industry wide, like with Allstate and State Farm. Certainly, Tesla is worse. Like State Farm, I think their loss ratios were above 120%, if I'm remembering right, in certain forms of insurance. So I'm curious, like how they compare. If you could provide some context.
Yeah, portions of last year, beginning of last year, some insurance companies were kind of offsides as far as pricing goes, and that's why we've seen some of the inflation data recently be so hot, because a lot of that risk has been repriced with. I mean, there's a variety of factors, but more recently, Progressive has done a really good job, and now there's I shouldn't say most, quite a few insurance companies are back to profitability. Some of the like old time ones like Allstate and State Farm and Progressive. Progressive for the fourth quarter of 2023 had a loss ratio of 88.7. So anything under 100 is considered profitable. And Tesla by some of the states had somewhere between 120 and 140% loss ratio.
David Katz.
I think the part you're missing, Otter, is that if you don't get the underwriting right, if you don't have enough money coming in for how you charge for your policies, it all equals out, doesn't matter. And that's why in California and in Florida, many insurance companies had to just stop writing policies, because in California, as was mentioned, the insurance commissioner wouldn't allow them rate increases that they needed. They looked at what's going on globally with the environment, and they're not even sure they can charge enough to underwrite what's happening in the future. The state of New Jersey decided they were going to get into the insurance business. Those people had no clue how to charge for an auto policy. The taxpayers lost their ass before they stopped doing it. So it doesn't just equal out if you can't get the money you need or the increases you need in the state, or you haven't planned for environmental hazards like wildfires in your rates to begin with.
Yeah, it's a tough business. Insurance financing, it's not as easy as it seems on the surface. Bradford.
Do you think the failure with Tesla Auto is one reason why Zach is no longer with Tesla? Zach Kirkhorn?
I mean, it's possible, but obviously we don't know, and we're not going to find out. And what's the purpose of speculating? He's gone. But yeah, it's possible.
I'm
Jimmy?
curious.
Yeah, Bradford.
I'm curious Stephen's thoughts on this before we move on. Just entertain me for a moment.
I think it's potential, but Zach kind of got unlucky that he entered into insurance right when there was huge changes in the underlying asset with the cars. So vehicles got a lot more expensive to repair, and obviously all the other COVID adjustments killed the insurance companies. So I think if you would have had more time to play it out, I think they could have got insurance priced right. I mean, it seems like they have the data there, but the equivalent would be like Rivian, where they're not even profitable on a gross profit metric, so they're obviously not going to be profitable on a net income or anything else like that. That's kind of similar to Tesla Insurance, is that they're not even pricing the premium correctly, and so if you're not profitable, then it's not going to cover obviously the rest of the expenses. So I don't know if that's exactly why Zach got fired completely, but I'm sure that it contributed to some of it.
David Katz.
And it is true partially that they are not, countrywide, maybe only in 15 states right now, but also insurance is a patchwork quilt of different carriers allowing to be operated in different states with different regulations. And so it's not a seamless process. It's difficult. In Florida, you have to do glass replacement for zero deductible. You have no choice. It's state law. And so that made it harder too. But it is true that perhaps if they were in all 50 states and got their underwriting correct, things could turn around. But it's not easy.
Jimmy.
Yeah, I understand everyone's opinion about this, but I feel like I'm usually getting beaten up when I have an opinion that's counter to everyone else. We have to have a long-term view about this. Everything that you've been saying, it's true. The loss ratio is quite high, premium's been written down, and so forth. But let's just see what the data says in 5 years. They just got into insurance a few years ago. Lemonade is not doing well either. There are a lot of issues. There's regulations too. California don't allow certain IoT data to be possible for analytics. I mean, it's complex. And insurance, to judge an insurance arm in 3 or 4 years, it seems really unfair. I don't really see why people are going after me on this. It's a good long-term investment in something that helps the Tesla ecosystem. It helps them understand repair costs, the rates of loss. It's very important data to have. And
Okay.
eventually it will be beneficial.
Yeah. Why do you say people are coming after you? Why are you playing the victim card?
Because typically what happens is I say something outside of geopolitics, and then you claim and others claim that it's not completely true. But you don't give me the time to explain why, if you take a long-term approach, what may not appear true can be understood if we had the data available.
Yeah, you've had the most talking time so far today, and to claim that you haven't had the time is ridiculous. And I'm not I'm not interested in people cutting others off, playing the victim card, making false statements. Not your day, David Katz.
I think that being in the insurance business, it sounds good, but it's a double-edged sword because people's rates are changing with Tesla in real time. And for some people with young drivers in the family, it's fantastic. They don't penalize for age. But getting penalized for driving down your neighborhood street and having a following too close penalty, maybe 4 or 5 times a day, that frustrates people too. And it's also a subject of a class action suit. So it's a double-edged sword that, insurance is a necessary evil that most of us wish we didn't have to pay for, but we really do need to mitigate that risk.
Yeah.
But it's not a happy payment.
Marty T in the reply says insurance will be needed for robotaxis. As insurance will be needed for robotaxis. Okay, I think that's enough insurance talk. Yutzi, what'd you think of today's macro data? PPI coming in hot.
Just like Habib's mom, hotter than expected.
Habib, what are your thoughts on that topic?
I mean, I am a very, very handsome man, and that would make sense that my parents are very attractive, and I appreciate the compliment. And thank you.
He literally said the opposite.
He didn't say my mom was hot. Hot like
No,
inflation.
he said hotter than expected. He said so. The expected was low. I think he's
Oh.
saying that because you have a Taycan.
Well, listen, I'm not interested in this kind of rhetoric. Okay, this is a mature space. Let's stick to objective data. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you'd see. So, what do you expect for tomorrow's CPI data?
I'm almost, honestly, I'm a little surprised that the market didn't react to today's PPI data as much as you would have expected, or not at all, really.
Yeah, I agree, though. I mean, I think structurally, this is something that I've been talking about for a few months now. We see Biden's comments on the stuff with China and raising tariffs and stuff like that, and all that stuff is functionally it's inflationary because when you have domestic partners that can't produce goods as cheap as they can be made internationally, it drives costs up. So I would expect PPI and CPI to run hot for a lot longer than near term, but that doesn't necessarily mean that near term they can't be soft. I'm not good at predicting. I tried. I'm not very good at predicting month-to-month changes in CPI or PPI. But as you noted, it is interesting that the market didn't really care about what happened with PPI data today.
Bradford, are your clients keeping an eye on inflation data at all? Does that inform their financial decisions or yours for them?
Not really. There's some Teslaonaires who there's one who's a consultant that's seeing some weakness in white collar jobs. That's about all I've heard recently from clients. They do. Our typical client does complain from time to time about inflation. It certainly doesn't help because like a lot of our clients are over 50% are retired, so they're just pulling from their investments. So it's like this uncomfortable spot they're in where they're pulling down their investments and they're wondering, okay, how far is it going to get us? And inflation doesn't help that.
Island, go ahead.
Sorry, I must have butt dialed it. No comment.
Okay. We have more inflation data coming out tomorrow. CPI is coming in. That's going to be more impactful than today's PPI data. We also have retail sales as well for April. And then New York State Empire manufacturing for May, business inventories for May. Lots of data coming in tomorrow and Thursday. Thursday is initial claims, continuing claims, housing starts, building permits, import, export prices. So lots of inflation data this week. Do you have a GME AMC investment?
No.
What do you think Powell? What do you think Powell's thinking when he looks at these stocks surging out of nowhere?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just GME or AMC. It's really a long list of names that have gotten beat up recently or highly shorted names. So if you look at, I mean, even in the EV stocks, some of those have done well.
Even Rivian, yeah.
So I don't think it's necessarily just GME or AMC or things like that. But one other thing I want to point out macro wise is if you like take a look at copper prices, you could definitely make an argument that the argument would say that construction real estate is going to be strong next 6-12 months, and manufacturing probably is going to be strong. And if markets looking ahead 6 to 9 months, definitely by 2025 people would expect rates to start coming down. So if CPI and PPI are hot for the next couple months, does the market really care? Who knows?
Stephen.
My question is on building the plant in Mexico. Can I go that direction?
Sure.
Do you think that building the plant in Mexico would be a positive because it will help lower costs? Because, of course, employment costs are less in Mexico than they are here in the US. And it would help offset any competitors from China coming in because, again, we'd have lower cost, lower priced vehicles.
Well, it sounds like you answered your question. But the thing is, they in Texas has overcapacity, right? So maybe it's not the right time right now, but eventually, yeah. Habib.
Question about leasing and financing, if we can go to that topic again.
Sounds good.
I know you mentioned, we talked about it before, but if you could just tell me what was the general consensus of why Tesla was not offering a lease buyout to the lessees after the Model 3. I wasn't sure about that.
Well, to the extent that you believe that the vehicle's resale value will be higher than what the market currently believes, for whatever reason, then it makes sense to not offer that buyout at the end. So let's say, for example, one possible reason could be adding it to a robotaxi network. If Tesla believes that these cars will be added to robotaxi network later and the asset value will increase and the market is failing to realize that right now, then you wouldn't offer a buyout option. Or even if it's just ADAS, FSD ADAS, improves car ownership experience and driving experience, and that would also drive resale values of Teslas higher. So, in that case too, you wouldn't offer lease buyout. You would rather have them return the leased car, and so that you can resell it in the used car market.
But
I think those are the primary.
So when you do a lease, however, when you do a lease, when they structure it, in essence, they can structure the monthly payments at any promotional rate that they want. So in theory, they could just offer a leasee they can make an arbitrary value. Like if that current lease promotion rate equals to $22,000 after 36 months, and you take $22,000 and you subtract it from the purchase price, which is just say it's 50,000, then you would have a value of 28,000, right? But they could say, if you want to buy this car, the lease purchase price at the end of the lease is going to be 35,000, and they can at least offer an arbitrary value, which gives the potential leasee the option to then at least consider buying it. Because if the argument is that, well, leases weren't taken up because people feel like they didn't have the right to buy them, then at least you're kind of giving them that option, even though the price is pretty high to buy the vehicle.
Yeah, so I mean, you're kind of assuming numbers there, right? If Tesla believes that it's higher than the numbers that you assumed, and kind of just says like, nobody's gonna buy it. Nobody's gonna buy it at the end of this, bro. Nobody's gonna agree to the lease agreement. Like, I don't think even if you offer it and you do it the way you're saying it, just for illustrative purposes, let's assume that you can add these cars to a robotaxi network and the asset value becomes $100,000. What difference is it gonna make if you work that into an agreement today?
Yeah. Okay. So if they believe that the value of the vehicle may still be at $50,000, for instance, not let's say 50,000, not 100,000, let's say 50,000, which is basically what its purchase price is right now.
Yeah,
Selling it at 35 is a huge hit for them.
Yeah, Tesla's gonna get criticized for it anyway. So, and also there's the fact that most people don't exercise that option, right? And we've seen many times that Elon just doesn't do these stupid games where it's just to appease some sort of psychological, games, I guess.
Well, I would agree, but then he did offer 0.99%. So,
I think that's on the financing side, right? That's not some sort of like a lease money factor thing. It's on the financing side. So I think they're doing it as a last resort because they don't really want to cut production anymore. Let's go to Machine Anna Bradford.
What?
Or what do you want to say? You request to speak.
Do you have a question?
Do you have a question?
Current vehicles are never going to be robotaxis for Tesla. Just stop talking about it.
Now, fine, but again, that was one possible scenario, and I also said it's really about if you believe the resale value of the vehicle is higher for whatever reason. It could be because maybe you expect a recession and Fed to pump money and drive these vehicle prices higher again 2-3 years from now. It could be because when FSD gets really good, the only way you can experience FSD is if you buy a Tesla, even as ADAS. So again, it can be a number of reasons, not just robotaxi, but that is also one possible reason. Bradford.
Yeah, one reason why people want the option to buy out is if they go way over on the miles, the penalty can be pretty significant, where they people feel like they just might as well do the buyout. But I agree with you, like vast majority do not use the option to buy the vehicle. And when you're doing a lease, you're paying for that option. So it's pretty silly that most people don't use it.
Yeah, I mean, the type of customer who leases cars, they just want the newest car for the next couple of years. And they just roll it to the next lease. I mean, these dealerships call them up and say, hey, we know your lease is coming up due. Here's another offer. We can extend it for another 3 years. Let's get you the newest car, etc. Like, these are not the type of people who are actually making spreadsheet calculations to see which math is better. I mean,
There is one other scenario.
and I bet you, even if Tesla introduced this, like buyout option, I bet you these lease rates wouldn't really go up much higher. It's just one of those things that people think like, oh, this is why the sales are not good. Let's do that again, and then let's do more ads. That's why the sales are. No, we do ads for a year, and we have year-over-year drop in sales, or it's because of Elon's tweets. And then you look at Rivians, they're gonna hit, and the CEO is like the model CEO they want. And there's like we've seen this like 10 times, like at least more than 10 times of examples of people are like, oh, I know why, this is why, let's do that. And then that's not why. Let's do a free trial on FSD. That's gonna get the take rate up. Nope, 2%. Let's do price cuts on FSD. We do that, nothing. Let's give it away for 30 days, 60. I mean, if it was up to these people, and let's do FSD transfer, nothing, no increase in sales. And this is like the yet another kind of ridiculous suggestion. And eventually, Tesla will probably do it, and eventually they're going to be proven wrong again. Habib?
I do like when machine tells you to not cut them off. Maybe one day I'll get to that position here on the speaker board. But,
he doesn't do it to me. He does it to Omar.
I think I've heard him say it to you too. Now, the other thing I was going to mention, there's that one issue with the lease that maybe Elon is also thinking, not just Elon, but their whole finance department is thinking about, which was during COVID when there was a shortage of vehicles. If he thinks that there's going to be some recession, EV vehicles are not going to be readily available, and people were buying out their leases and then selling the cars for profit. Maybe he wants to prevent that from happening also in the future. Maybe that's a component too. Great comment, Habib. Excellent contribution. You're so smart. I know. Thank you.
I'm just reading live chat. Justin says, I was a day away from taking delivery on Model 3 in Canada. Tesla said they were suspending financing until the end of the month. Interesting. Bradford?
I was just reacting to that. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, I wonder what's going on. Inflexity. Inflexity, go ahead. Jimmy.
Yes, I just got up here. I couldn't hear you the last 10 seconds.
What would you request to speak for?
To get back into the game, to apologize to everyone I offended, to show that I will be a better otter.
Okay. Inflixit is not talking. Steven?
No, that I was giving Jimmy 100.
Okay. Let's see what else is new. We talked about Kia EV9, 4% more range, 84 kilowatt-hour battery, 350 kilowatt fast charging. Kia's doing a good job with their EVs. Their sales are up too, and their EV9 is eating into R1S sales. This post doesn't say anything. I think Kia is, they said they would qualify for the $7,500 credit later this year or early next. Let's see if we have any updates from Troy. Troy says, this was earlier, he said, we have the actual number on Chinese car insurance registration, 9,800, and he was expecting 11,400, so it was below what he expected. He says, let's hope that 0.99% financing for Model Y in the US significantly boosts demand. He said deliveries in Q2 will be lower than the 466,000 units delivered in last year's Q2. But the question is, how much lower? He says it could be bad or very bad. He says he needs to wait for more data. Predicted delivery this quarter will be much less than 466,000, but hopefully it will be over the 400,000 psychological level. Q1 was 387,000, and last year's Q2 was 466,000. I don't think anyone's expecting quarter-over-quarter decline in deliveries, but it looks like it's going to be substantially lower than last year's Q2. Inflexity, go ahead.
And I was just saying that the only EV maker currently affected by the battery tariffs is Nissan, and they barely sell 5,000 cars in the US, so it doesn't matter as per the battery tariffs that have been applied today.
Okay, thank you. Xpot, go ahead.
Question simple. As far as getting the kind of image of Tesla out of people's brains, like, what do you think the best way for Tesla to combat the range or hybrid problem would be, as far as getting people to understand that it is a viable solution for probably 80 to 90% of people by now? Because most people I talk to who are in tech sales or kind of like privy to a lot of tech out there still say things to me like, yeah, but what if I run out of battery? Or like they just don't get that that it's those aren't issues anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the primary issue here, is that hybrid sales are taking off in the last couple of quarters, in the last year really, and Toyota has done an excellent job of profiting from people's range anxiety. And I don't think it's going to be easy to change that, honestly. I think hybrids are seen as a middle ground, kind of like this middle option that, you know, for some reason, I say this in my poll, like when I create a poll, I say this too, where people get attracted to this like middle option. So, I mean, to change that, it's going to take unreasonably high range per charge and multiple times more like denser charging networks where people see multiple charging networks on their way to work and back. And that would take billions of dollars and a few years
And I don't think Elon will ever produce unreasonably long range per charge vehicles because that would be wasting batteries. So I think it's going to take until robotaxis are evolving to change people's minds because full EVs win hands down versus hybrids in a full autonomy robotaxi future. Like any fuel cost advantage multiplies in a robotaxi future by 5x, 10x. And people don't care about your powertrain type of powertrain. They won't care in a robotaxi future because all they will care about is that can it take me from point A to point B safely, on time, and I don't have to wait much longer than what I wait already for an Uber car. So all those cost advantages, I think, will allow Tesla to undercut other options. So we may have to wait until then.
It may take, I agree with what last two speakers just said. It may take a person who's never driven an EV or a hybrid to buy their hybrid because they are risk averse or whatever, do an experiment. In 2 years, did I really need the gas portion of the EV? Can I get comfortable with charging enough at my home and on the road a few times to have my 80 miles, do my, it may take that. It may take a mid step for some people just to change because they will never go to full EV because of what that last speaker said. I hear it all the time. I've been driving for 11 years on EV only. And, I'm convinced and other people are convinced. Maybe I wasn't convinced in the first 6 months, but that's all it took, really. Thanks.
Yeah. That last speaker was very smart. Also very handsome. David Katz?
I like what I believe Mike just said. I bought my first hybrid in 2005 and it was a great car. And I believe step hybrids, it's obvious people are buying hybrids right now, but I think they're also a stepping stone to electric cars. It got me used to some instant power. It got me used to regenerative braking. I think at one point, hybrids were the most traded in cars when purchasing a Tesla. So I think it is going to help. It's temporary stall right now for many reasons, but I think people will think more about electric vehicles after having a hybrid. And in my state, regular gas is not an exaggeration with all the green energy taxes we have. $1.50 a gallon, just state taxes, is $5 a gallon. And so still people aren't going to get the savings with a lot of hybrid cars that they really deserve. And they're going to make an economic decision. I think this hybrid stepping stone is temporary, hurt for EVs and lower interest rates, even a more affordable car if they need it, and where Tesla's going is still going to be great for the future.
It's got enough inflexibility.
The only other thing was that like my wife got a Tesla and she didn't like the idea at all, but now like she drove it for 2 months and she like can't even imagine having a different car. So it's like, how do you get people to pull that initial trigger? Like I just don't see a way for that to happen mass market.
Inflexity. Mike,
Yeah.
please stay on mute until I raise your hand until I call on you. Inflexity.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell everyone that EVgo, I think they are the third biggest capex spender in the charging market for EVs. They have reiterated that they will adopt NACS this year, by the end of this year, across all their stations.
David Katz.
Thank you. And there's one thing I forgot to say. I forgot what it was, so come back to me. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Mike?
Yeah, I think the analogy is, if I was doing it all over again, instead of 11 years ago now, I'd go out and rent a Tesla for a week, 2 weeks, that dollar value would be so inconsequential to the large decision of buying a $40,000, $50,000 vehicle. That's kind of the way to do it. Like if you were thinking of buying a house and you can Airbnb it for 2 weeks and live in it and sleep in it and check it all out, that'd be like a little dollars to pay to try it out. People hire, consultants before they hire the person. People get interns before they say, here's a full-time offer. So that would be the way I would do it if I was approaching it, instead of like jumping in, well, I guess I'll just buy a hybrid because I'm not comfortable enough. Rent a Tesla for 2 weeks, and then if you still want to buy a hybrid, go and do so. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's just that most people are not even considering an EV for their purchase. Like it's not even in their mind as a possible option. They're not kind of compelled to buy an EV in the next because they want to save the world. Most people aren't like that. So, David Katz.
Thank you. What I want to also mention is that a lot of Americans don't like to be told what to do. And I think, for better or for worse, politically, when they were told, or the EPA decided, or what government decided, that there should be a large portion of electric cars by 2030, they just felt like this was overreach in their mind. Whether it was good for them or not, they didn't like the government telling them that. And it created fodder for the anti-EV people to say, look, look what they're doing to us, look what they're going to take away, whether it's true or not. And I think there's a factor there where people were rebelling against that. Now, those regulations have been relaxed, and Legacy Auto and other companies have different ways of satisfying them, and they are now moved to 2035, I believe. But the political damage has already been done.
Xander.
Hey, quick question. Do you think a extended test drive campaign would be effective?
Well, they're already doing that, right? They're already doing overnight test drives. And they've been doing that for a little bit.
Yeah, but if nobody knows, that's what I mean, like some sort of push for it or incentive to test drive. I know they did that for pushing old Tesla owners.
Well, they have referral credits for doing test drives, right? So what else do you recommend Tesla to do?
That's why I put it in the form of a question.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think if more people test drive the car, like those overnight test drives, I think that would be beneficial. I know a couple of people who tour-rode the vehicles before they purchase, but the thing is, like, before they do that, they have to decide that I am considering an EV for my next purchase. I mean, Tesla is kind of following all of the above approach right now, and they're doing a lot to drive EV adoption, from price cuts to financing offers to lease offers to various forms of marketing, referral bonuses, FSD. I think at some point, these things, even if they don't have an overnight impact, at some point cumulatively, they're going to be enough to kind of kick it to the next level. And so we'll see when that is. I don't think anyone knows when that's going to happen, but we'll know when we see it. Xander?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I remember going to like a Chevrolet drift, like a parking lot test drive event with my dad, and they gave out T-shirts, and so that really stuck with me as a child.
Xbot?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on that. I mean, I grew up as a physics engineering major in Elon's prime when the Model S was coming out, and he had this whole campaign where he was everywhere, like literally factually telling people, "No, this does work. My car's cooler, it's faster, it's better tech, it's, you know what I mean? I'm using modern stuff. These car companies have been doing nothing for decades. And it's like, I feel like we lost that. And then on the back of that, I feel like everyone's yelling that Elon needs to shut up. And it's like, he's the one that got us here, like proving people wrong on the news. And
yeah,
so I feel like he needs to talk more. Like I love to see him back in war mode and back after it, because it's like, I feel like we might get that now with the newer iterations and newest tech. So
Xander, are you worried about something? Like, are you worried that EV adoption has stopped? Then this is it.
Oh no, not at all. I think it's just you know, a slower growth in part of the curve, but you know, that's economy driven.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, Yoda, and then Habib.
Yeah, I was thinking, Tesla can have some agreement with Hertz for, like a very highly
Hertz is
discounted.
a dead. It's a zombie dead company. They already went bankrupt once. They're gonna go bankrupt again. And Tesla did. They purchased a bunch of Teslas, added to their fleet, and then they turned around and they blamed Tesla for their problems.
No, I mean, I'm just to help them out with, discounted rentals, right? For that way,
No,
people can try
you're,
that.
you're are you saying Tesla could offer discounts to Hertz?
Yeah, working with this Hertz. Yeah,
No,
sure.
no, I don't think so. I don't think
It's
so.
like $50 a ride or something. Not
Man,
even that
like,
much.
this is, see, again, like, this is yet another suggestion, as I mentioned earlier, yet another suggestion of what Tesla should do: switch to the way of Legacy Oda. Legacy Oda offers these fleet discounts to companies like Hertz when they can't sell it to retail. Legacy Oda does low leasing offers, low financing offers, and one by one, what are you gonna say next? We should build dealerships. That's where this is going. Tesla is increasingly becoming a legacy automaker because of ridiculous suggestions like this. Habib?
Well, to chime in on the question you asked, Xander, the more that I look at the macro environment and seeing how heavily the macro environment influences, excuse me, the EV purchases, I do think that we may be hitting a local max, especially with the current sexy fleet of vehicles. And there's a graph that I posted in the chat, which I've seen float around on X for a few years now. And the more I look at it, the more I think that actually makes sense that we potentially could be facing a local max, because if the macro environment does not shift, which is, we're trying to predict when it's going to shift in our favor, but if it doesn't shift in our favor, people aren't going to be buying EVs. They're too expensive and we cannot get the cost down enough. So the next thing that's going to accelerate Tesla as a company is going to be FSD robotaxi.
I agree. And to that extent, Jake, to that point, Jake McCombs in live chat says Tesla's lease today will be worth a lot more when the lease expires if FSD is solid. Lauren?
Hey, my pet peeve pain point that I wish Tesla would try and address more with sales, that I think is a huge pain point for tons of people, is home charging. Like, EVs are such a no-brainer for myself and anyone that has a home and has the charging set up. But honestly, even though I'm the biggest Tesla fan, I don't think I would recommend my mom buy an EV because she lives in an apartment with no place to charge it. And it would be a huge pain in the ass for her. She's got a Prius. She's way better off with the Prius than a Tesla. But I wish Tesla would go after, like, instead of maybe some of the price cuts, I wish they would do an incentive where they say, hey, you get a free high power wall charger and a $3,000 credit for an electrician to come out to your house and install a charging system. And I also wish they'd spend some serious time beating on doors of like apartment.
Let me stop you right there, because like this is why I think people should dig into Tesla's financials more. Because what you just said, let's calculate the cost for a second. Okay, a $3,000 credit for electricity to come out, and we're going to deliver 1.8 million vehicles. Multiply that by 3,000. That's $5.4 billion suggestion just you threw out casually that Tesla should take on when we have just generated negative free cash flow in Q1.
I totally understand that. My thought is like, hey, maybe instead of the 20 grand in price cuts they have done over the last couple of years, they should have done 17 grand in that incentive. Because the other way to look at it is we're all just assuming that the consumers that are buying these million cars are going to go spend $5.8 billion of their own money installing this.
Tesla didn't do $20,000 of price cuts in last year.
I mean, I paid 80 grand for a Model Y 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's your anecdotal. You can also, again, you can pick up yet another time, Lauren. You're wrong on the financials. I'm going to move you down. Look up Tesla's average sales price, and you're going to see it's not $20,000. So you're starting from wrong premise. You're throwing out suggestions that are completely off the wall, casually, and then yeah, that's not welcome on the speaker board. Silver Spider.
Yeah, hey, hi, Yemen. I just wanted to say, I know at least 2 people that have a Prius that they bought 10 years ago, and they only pay like $25 for gas a month, they claim. And it's really hard to tell them that they should be able to spend 40, 45 grand on a Tesla. So it'd be interesting to see if anybody's got some advice on how somebody could counter that.
Who wants to answer that question?
Was it a plug-in Prius or a regular Prius, non-plug-in?
Yeah, I think one of them's got a plug-in.
Well, they may be spending $100 extra on electric and 25 on gas, on the occasional gas. So they are doing what a pure EV would be doing as well. And yeah, there's no compromise against someone who's bought a car, depreciated it down, and is still using it has no car payment and hasn't had one in the past 5 years. It's really difficult to say, go and buy a new car, any car. So the best thing is a Tesla now is within earshot, within range of a regular car. Plus, you have to include total cost of ownership, which I know a lot of people don't. But anybody who has a car that's on its last leg but still working and doesn't have a payment, it's hard to even tell them go out and spend 30 grand on a regular car. So I hear you on that, but it's kind of an unfair analysis.
Okay, thank you. Machine.
People have to remember in California, especially Northern California, the electricity rates have gone up so much that it's assuredly true that a Prius saves you money versus a Tesla, probably, or it's equal. People used to buy EVs because they thought they were saving on fueling energy costs. And in the Bay Area, it's simply not the case because of the electricity rates now. So that's a big headwind for Tesla in terms of demand that isn't really going to go away in this area. And this is the area with the highest, number of EVs, and most people who are willing to buy them is here. So Tesla's been hurt because of that.
Wessex. Can you guys see Wessex as a speaker?
Yeah, I can see him as a speaker, but you can't hear him.
Okay, Vic.
Yeah, hi everyone. I have a question regarding, I'm not sure if it has been discussed today, the video about the FSD being kind of tested unofficially on the roads in Moldova, in Chisinau. I watched the video and I recognized my former classmate on that video, and I'm planning to have a call with him. I'm wondering if you might have any sort of questions, what should I ask him? Again, if for those who have not seen the video, I think it has been kind of a crash or potentially like damaged Tesla, and it has been like unofficially imported into Moldova, and FSD is still on that vehicle. Yeah, so why this? I kind of watched the whole video, and there were kind of interesting bits in there, but I'm planning to kind of go a bit into more details about the experience with FSD on like this sort of roads. There were some comments about mapping, and again, I guess Tesla is not covering quite well the maps around those sort of area. And again, my friend was mentioning that essentially it depends quite a lot on open maps, and like contributions from people has a lot of impact on the
Okay.
accuracy. And
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
Habib.
Hey, Machine, what's the per kilowatt rate in the Bay Area for electricity?
During it depends during winter and summer, and then nighttime versus daytime. But you can probably average that's about 40 cents per kilowatt hour. The daytime rate's higher, and the summertime's higher. In addition, they're levying some other fees, which they just announced another increase monthly. Where they're just trying to do all sorts of stuff. But yeah, 40 cents.
Press 6.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, what's happening? Sorry, I had some problems here. I had to reboot and all that. It's interesting. Some of the previous speakers were basically saying the same thing I think, but in small ways. The bottom line, the unfortunate part, and I'm going to be critical for a minute, is we've had many demand levers to pull. Price is one of them. That's mainly all we've been doing is reducing the price over the last year and a half. And there's not much lever left to pull which is a problem. That's where we are. One of the speakers said, that one of their friends is concerned about buying an EV because of range. And until we educate, if we use a different demand lever, which is education, until we start doing those things, we shouldn't expect really a lot of different results. But until Tesla puts in the effort to communicate to these prospective customers, we're still going to have that problem. So to me, it's kind of like the good news. It's like, look, all we have to do is shift strategy. But at the same time, it's concerning to me that we don't.
Do you know how much Tesla spent in ads marketing in Q1?
No.
Why not?
Well,
what if
because
Tesla's what if Tesla's already spending more than they can afford? Why
Yeah,
don't you check the financials?
Because that's the wrong question. The right question is, what's the problem? And the problem is
no, you can't just spend your way out of a problem not looking at your financial statements. Look at your financial statements. But that's what you're suggesting. You said that's not the problem. We have to focus on the problem. The question is, what's the problem? And we should educate people. How are you going to educate people without spending money?
I didn't say that. What I'm saying is
how do you suggest Tesla do that?
Okay. So what I was saying is you can't measure how much you spend as the.
How do you suggest Tesla educate customers on range? Go ahead. I want concrete suggestions with a price tag aside to them.
Well, my general point is that they need
I don't care about your
range.
general points. I don't care about your general points. I want specific recommendations to management with a price tag, cost estimate associated to that suggestion. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're asking me what tactics Tesla should take at what price, and I don't have those answers. What I do have is they need to.
Thank you. You just want to complain. You just want to complain, basically. JT.
I wanted to talk about the previous guy that was talking about how he can convince people to get into a Tesla. Simply show them FSD, give them a ride, explain the facts about the safety and how it is safer than them driving the car, explain how easy their commutes are going to be on a daily basis, and it's literally going to change their lives. I've done a couple of flips on people with Priuses, just FSD. That is the answer.
Jimmy.
You want to know how to get people into Teslas? You get a Tesla that can go 400 miles in range, and then everybody else in the auto industry can shut the F up.
My God, this is ridiculous. You must be the CEO of Lucid. This is ridiculous. This space has been one ridiculous suggestion after another ridiculous suggestion. Machine.
The answer is you can't.
you can't force people to buy Teslas. You can't massively change the organic demand for these cars in some short period of time. These things are built up over years, if not decades. Okay, the desire of EVs from a small quantity of rich doctors like Habib who were buying Teslas 10 years ago was very small. People have excess cash to burn. They want to look fancy, stare at their beard in the mirror while they admire their sweet electric ride. And now you've moved into the commoners, people who just want a car that's kind of nice, safe, reliable, cheap to operate. That's where we've moved into. And these people aren't just going to all of a sudden jump up and take on a new technology and all the risks associated with it without a long latency in terms of understanding everything. And that's just how technological progress is. So advertising isn't going to work. I don't know what can work. We've already seen prices should be one of the biggest stimulants, and we've seen price does not create huge demand immediately. What else can we do? I'm not really sure, to be honest, that there is anything right now.
One thing that I think that moved the needle, can I speak? One thing I think moved the needle a little bit, not education, but awareness.
Yeah, you have to stay on mute, raise your hand, and wait to be called upon, Mike. I already warned you once. This is your second warning. Cody?
Yeah, thanks, Emin. I'll tell you one suggestion that worked on me with my first EV. Tesla had a pretty robust, they still do to a degree, certified pre-owned program. I think if Tesla leaned into that a little bit stronger, I think we'd have a lot more adoption at a lower price point. I think we spend too much time in these spaces talking about how, used car prices have been decimated by price cuts and what have you. I think from an adoption perspective, getting people into long-term ownership at a lower price point by any means is a good idea. And if Tesla could alleviate some concerns over, higher mileage vehicles, which is really not a factor in EVs, or the charging infrastructure at home, as others suggested, or whatever, and do it using a trade-in mode that would get more trade-ins in the door, that would allow them to push more new vehicles out. Once they get them in the door, I think repeat customers for the Tesla product and EVs generally on a go-forward basis is a lot easier to sell.
Thank you. All right.
Do you think, as I sit here, I've been relaxing, cooking a new French meal for dinner, and just opining on when I think
dinner.
Well, I'm slow cooking something.
Isn't it like noon over there?
Yeah, so I'm slow cooking a dish, this famous French dish. I don't want to mispronounce it, but I'm gonna try. I believe it's cock of wine. Oh wait, no, I think that's wrong. I think it's choc de vin.
Okay.
And yeah, sorry, I totally hacked that first pronunciation. Very fancy, tasty dish. Cook it for many hours. Just opining on as I see Rivian and GameStop and AMC, Beyond Meat, VinFast, all these stocks suddenly going up. Even Tesla's up a bit more percentage wise than it should be. It's beta. And I'm getting a little skittish on the market that the rug's going to be pulled out from under us here in the next few months.
Yeah, possible. I can imagine Powell looking at these stocks and going, "Oh yeah, everything's normal." Yoda.
Nothing to add now except machine.
I thought you were about to get into a Gemini demo with that French cooking.
Yeah, we're gonna switch to that real quick. Let's get what Mike had to say real quick, and then we're gonna switch to that.
I was going to say one thing that does help is where superchargers are located, not near a store, but out near the road. It's a supercharger that has to go in. I'm sure they're pushing the cost down as much as they can. It is somewhat advertising because, like Roosevelt Field Mall near me, there's got to be 100,000 cars, a day that see that thing. And I just hope we keep building it out because.
I mean, I agree with you, and that's exactly what I used to say for basically throughout the last year, right? But Elon is two steps ahead of you and I on this. He's moved on to robotaxis. He's moved on building a robotaxi future. Okay. And he couldn't care less right now, I think, about these unit sales. And I think he's going to let these unit sales play out as they do, and then just cut costs to make sure free cash flow doesn't turn negative deeply. That's it. So all this talk about financing or superchargers or what are we going to do about hybrids? All of that nonsense that we've been talking over the last hour is not even on his radar anymore. So we need to move on to along with him. Machine.
I fully agree. But the reason why everyone's doing that is because they're trying to rationalize how to get earnings back up because they feel uncomfortable, and I think rightly so, with the fact that if you don't do anything and you just look at the state of earnings now, that the valuation might be loftier and there might be a correction. And Musk doesn't care. He's just focused on extracting the value of the future and what you need to do today. He doesn't care about the share price. So I think there's that huge discrepancy between people here and what Musk is thinking. And I think they also think, I'm not going to try to speak for everyone, but I'm predicting if they truly believe what Musk is thinking, they're worried that people might say, oh crap, you don't care about car prices now? You just care about FSD? Investors might get skittish. And I don't think everyone here is comfortable with that.
David. David Katz.
I think that made a lot of sense. Whatever, Musk is 2 years ahead of everybody, and he's willing to roll the dice much more than anyone else. So I like that, and I think what Machine is cooking for dinner is called coq au vin, chicken with wine.
Well, it's not cock on vine.
It's coq. Coq is chicken.
Yeah, but what do you think? They're all the same word, David. Cats. Just like cats and cats, the animal, that's where you came. That's what the name came from, right?
A German name from centuries ago, but it does mean Katze is German for cat. Yes.
And by the way, coq is rooster. Okay, not chicken. Chicken
Even
is
better.
poulet. Excuse your French.
Thank you.
So how do you say choke your chicken in French?
Well, that was a while ago I learned French, so I need to refresh on my Rosetta Stone. Okay, let's talk about some Google I/O. Yoda, what were your takeaways from Google I/O? I didn't watch this one.
Well, first, it was a lot better than I think ChatGPT's in terms of scope. In terms of capability, I think the core AI functionality is quite comparable. The advantage to Google is that it's able to deploy that really in all the native apps and properties. So for example, obviously Google search, you could think Gmail, you can think of you trying to ask it to summarize emails from a particular thread into 3 points. You can think of advanced auto complete type of functionality where the response is tailored for you. So yeah, there's lots. I would say where if your my takeaway is that if your job today primarily involves moving pixels, you are looking at a very early retirement.
Okay. Finflexity.
Yeah, my question is for machine. So the Rabbit R1, they are actually developing a large action model that they're calling it. So it's intended to complete tasks, as we know. And Google mentioned AI agents today. So do we know about anyone else that is trying to, create a large action model based on this principle?
I'm not sure.
Do you understand the question?
I think you're talking about the model approach from Google and OpenAI the last few days presented. I haven't. Is that correct?
No, no, so like Rabbit R1, they are developing a large action model that will mimic your touches on your mobile screen, or whatever screen that they are developing it for. So they'll try to complete the task autonomously. And Sundar Pichai in his letter today said that Google intends to do the same with Gmail, filing out return requests for your documents when you for your packages when you ask it to. So, like, is that a similar approach, or is that inherently different on the tech itself?
Machine.
I'm not sure. I think I understand the question. I'm not sure.
You don't understand a word he said. And honestly, I don't either. I'm sorry for saying. I'm really trying. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. I have no idea what you're saying.
But
I think Omar understand. Others do. I don't fucking get it when you talk. It's so frustrating because I'm like literally trying really hard.
So I had I got about 75% of the words, but I think I was missing a few critical ones. I had my phone up to my ear. And, this reminds me of a story when I was in grad school in Sweden. And there was a whole bout of international people. And we're all hanging out. And there's a Scottish guy. And the Scottish guy's accent was so thick and strong that it was really hard to pay attention to. And I had to really focus to understand it. Meanwhile, all these other non-native English speakers were just looking at me in horror as they thought they understood English well enough, and they could not understand a word he said. So I literally had to translate his terrible Scottish accent into something that they could understand. It just reminded me of that. No, I'm not making fun. Listen, I have strong accents in all their languages too. So yeah.
Yeah, I've been there too. Yoda, I think understood the question.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, all of these models from Google, from OpenAI, they're really trying to not wait for you to ask the question explicitly anymore, but rather spend as much time with you so that they understand the context and ideally predict what you're going to ask. Now, how Google does that, let's say in the Gmail context, is much easier than say ChatGPT because they have access to your inbox, whereas ChatGPT needs to essentially screen share with you for now before you can log in. Let's say enable them to log into your Gmail so that they could read your screen and again help you with any questions that might come up. Where things are approaching is the idea of millions of tokens. So the token sizes are getting so large that they can essentially have access to a lot of your documents, all of your documents, to help you with your question or to predict what you're going to ask. That is advantage Google because again, you've got those accounts already. They see your data versus ChatGPT. They have a lot of users, but you haven't surrendered your data to them today.
Omar, and then Jimmy. Or Jimmy.
What was the question?
Jimmy.
Yeah, so this is the takeaway from today's event versus ChatGPT 4. Google owns all your data and they will collaborate and use an AI tool to do so. So searching emails, working with groups, collaborating with teams, because Google owns all your data because you're using all Google searches and everything. And ChatGPT 4 is just a fun kid's toy for you to use as a personal assistant on your own personal phone and has no collaboration whatsoever as teams. So next year, ChatGPT 4, their presentation will probably be focused on teams to compete with Google.
Okay, thank you. Can we put Google I/O aside for a second? So there's another Fred Lambert article about the couple of AI leads that left and joined Cruise's Kyle Vogt. And I want to get people's thoughts on this. We have talked before about how Tesla's transition to prioritizing AI, and most of the layoffs haven't really involved AI engineers, but that seems to, at least on the surface, changed with these two people who left a CEO that clearly has succeeded in so many ways and joined a CEO that failed, which is amazing to me. But Machine?
So I saw one tweet from one of these people, and at first when I heard, someone moved, I'm like, I mean, maybe it's a big deal or not. But I was surprised actually. If you read the person's tweet, they're very bullish on FSD. So my initial takeaway was actually a positive, because I'm like, well, usually you don't hear these people be so opinionated on the technology, especially
like that might just be they're trying not to burn bridges, right? Because if FSD was, let's say, close to be a robotics level, why would these people leave and leave options on the table?
Are you serious? If you're
Tell
there,
me.
well, first of all, they don't really have options. I think it's mostly RSUs that just vest, usually fully vest over 4 years. And so if you've been there for 4 years, I don't know how long that person was there for, but most of your options, your RSUs have vested. So unless you get a refresh on top of that, there's actually not much motivating you to stay. And aside from that, if once they vested, you can just hold them. So if you do believe in robotaxi and you think you have a lot of shares in Tesla, then just hold and wait. They've done all the hard work, and it may still take time for it to actually happen. Maybe they don't want to be there working on the nitty-gritty details. Meanwhile, you can go to this new venture, be an early employee, get a high percentage of the equity, which probably will pay out even better for them, just because they're an early employee, if it pans out. And they see the hype
If it
cycle
pans
here.
out, exactly. So you're telling me that these engineers, a couple of engineers, saw more potential in this startup than Tesla RSU/options they may be getting in the next round of compensation. And you're telling me that they're not leaving any options on the table, like any stock options on the table by leaving.
I don't know their exact situation. My point is that the way Tesla does it is it's not options, it's RSUs. So you're getting stock in the company.
Okay.
And once it's vested, you own that stock. You don't have to sell it. Options are different, right? You have to.
But I don't know if that's true, because Tesla's stock-based compensation has continued, to appear on our income statements. And even though Elon's, comp plan has vested already, so clearly there are some options vesting for certain employees. It's not just all RSUs for all employees, right?
Possibly, but from what I've read, that's what they give out to most employees. Either way, so it does matter, I guess, right? Because options are something that you may lose or you have to exercise upon leaving the company. But my guess is that they have a 4-year plan for vesting these most likely RSUs, but options over those 4 years, and then by default, there's no new grant after that. Now, usually, if they want you to stay longer, they'll give you additional refresh or something, but it's not going to be as big as the initial package per year. So your now going forward rate of compensation is less than it was the first 4 years. That's usually the case. And meanwhile, you go to this new bot company, which you may think has much lower chance of success. Ultimately, you could truly believe that, but the fact is that they offer you a great salary and a high percentage of the equity, that even in a few years, even if you think ultimately it's going to be a failure, they might keep raising more capital and show off, ride the hype cycle, become a $50 billion valuation, or even 10, and that will be way more money for them percentage wise, because they will own 0.5% of the company or 0.1%, and that's a huge amount of money, right? If it's $10 billion, you're still talking about $10 million or something. So
Yeah.
that's how
So
I view it.
no, I understand the illustrative example, but the fact is, in the last 5 quarters, the following numbers are Tesla's stock-based compensation. Okay, and none of this includes Elon's comp, obviously, because he's been working for free basically. So for the last year or so.
RSU's going SBC. RSU's going into that.
Okay, but here are the numbers, right? So, I mean, I guess it can. Yeah, you're right. I mean, RSUs would go into this too, to the extent that they are discounted, I guess, right? Right, machine? Or are they just kind of like given?
You're just given a certain number of units per year, so that's going to go in. I'm pretty sure that's going to go into
Okay, well, I mean,
compensation.
but then we're back to square one, because why wouldn't you stay for longer and get these RSUs at zero cost, basically? So it's the same idea.
No, because usually the offer is, we're going to give you 10,000 shares of Tesla. That when someone gets offered a contract and a job, it's, here's your pay, and we're going to give you 10,000 shares of Tesla. You're going to get these shares over 4 years. First year, 2,500 a year, with a 1-year cliff. You have to stay 1 year to get any of them, and you get to 2,500. Then each month another percent vest until 4 years are up. Then by that time you get all of them. So at that point, at 4 years, you're not getting any more. So that's the key aspect, is that you stay there for a while, and at some point you see in the future that you're not going to be getting more shares. You've already gotten all the shares that you're going to get, and then maybe you make a move. Now, to combat that, many companies, they don't want these people to leave. They understand that. So they'll, at the end of 4 years, they'll say, we're going to give you more share. We're going to give you a new boost. You're going to get more shares for the next few years to help them stay. So that may or may not happen in this case, especially with this company and the CEO trying to cut costs, or also maybe trying to keep the stock-based compensation dilution lower for his own benefit. I don't know. I'm just giving you some possibilities.
Okay, we're gonna go to just for fun, then Omar.
Yeah, so I think in addition to all the I think points about the economic comp, I just want to comment on sort of the Kyle Boyd. Even though I think you could maybe characterize Cruz as a failure, or at least not the number 1 or 2 player, I think Kyle, his track record is arguably one of the best in the valley. Yeah, I think he's considered co-founder at 2 companies that had basically billion-dollar exits. And I'm not sure about how much he was involved with Social Cam, but that was like tens of millions. And so I could certainly see, people who are in that space, who respect him, who think there's a good chance of a multi-billion-dollar outcome here, thinking that just the upside is bigger there than, if Tesla, even if Tesla 10x's in the next, few years, the upside for an early employer co-founder, with someone who could have a multi-billion-dollar exit could certainly be higher.
Kyle Vogt left MIT during his junior year to take a job with the team that would go on to form Justin TV and Twitch. A co-founder at Justin TV, Vogt was later described as a creative genius at the startup who hero coded the company out of problems and designed the camera systems necessary for live streaming. As reported in Fortune, according to Justin TV co-founder Justin Kan, Vogt would just lock himself in a room for 3 days and code away, and then emerge with something that worked. Justin Kan's younger brother and future co-founder Cruz, Dan Khan, spent a summer interning at Justin TV. In June 2011, Vogt became co-founder at both SocialCam and Twitch, both of which were acquired, SocialCam for $60 million and Twitch by Amazon in a deal for $970 million. And now Cruz. Machine?
So yeah, just to update, I looked up this one engineer who moved over to the bot company from Tesla. He worked at Tesla from October 2019 to April 2024. So just like I said, he was at Tesla for a full 4 years and some months, which is right around the time I'm saying that most of his stock-based compensation had fully vested, and he already received most of it. And maybe he's received a bit more this year, but he's seeing, that there's not more coming in. So he's already got the stock. He's not getting much more. That's when it's time to move on.
Okay. Jimmy, and then Finflexity. Okay. Omar?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised to see these two go and start a company with, Kyle Vogt, who left Cruise, but it isn't really, you know, that surprising that they would want to go and be a founder of a new company and be the CTO rather than be an employee of a company. After working at the company for many years, training many versions of FSD, it's not normal in Silicon Valley for engineers to stay forever and ever. Typically, you'll have like a 4-year vesting schedule for options, and you'll kind of stay to the end of that, and then you'll go to a different company. And it's generally considered bad practice to stay too long, as you're probably not getting paid as much as you should. So when you're, hugely successful, you have a success like FSD 12, and you get asked to be the CTO and founder of a different company, and you own the company, you have a majority, major stake in the company. It's a much better situation than being an employee at a large company, who has to do a bunch of work to make Elon rich, right? Like when somebody makes a move like this, you say, congratulations. Even though it may not be successful, it's always a dream any engineer has that one day they can be successful enough to start their own company. And they've raised about $130 million. Nat Friedman, Patrick Collison, a bunch of smart people putting money into this company. So this is kind of an obvious next career move for them. It's obviously sad to lose them, but that's kind of what happens in Silicon Valley. People go, they move on to different companies. You know, I don't think the impact of them leaving is going to be as great as, Karpathy leaving, for instance. And even with him, obviously, FSD is doing better than ever. So I think their bullishness kind of says it all. I think they feel that the work is done. The what's left for FSD is not really like a lot of engineering. It's just scaling up training, getting more compute, getting more data, doing a lot of like boring stuff to kind of flesh out the model that, they've sort of developed. So, it seems like a natural career move for them. Wish them the best of luck. It's great to be a co-founder and a CTO of a new company that's received all this investment. And, everybody's doing a robot. It was funny seeing his exchange with George Hotz as well. But I feel like I kind of see these stories every day, usually from Electric, where it's like, oh, this guy left or that guy left. Yeah, we know people are leaving. There were a massive round of layoffs, and then some people even decide to leave just because they're feeling, insecure or whatever about their position. So you see these stories like head of cyberquad for kids leaves the company. Head of cleaning the bathrooms leaves the company. Okay, well, we'll find someone else to clean the bathrooms. It really isn't as dire of a situation as you would think, just seeing all these stories every day.
Inflexity. I had back in high school. So I went to an American high school in Istanbul called Robert College. Okay, and the college we called it combination of middle school and high school with a prep year in the front. 7 years. It's called Robert College. Okay, founded by Americans. Half the class were in English, but it's kind of like proper English, not the English that people speak in the U.S. But then we had this one physical education teacher who was American, and he was African American, and he had this like thick accent. He spoke so fast, and I didn't understand a word he said. So I would always bring my friend with me, who also speak as much English as I did, and we would listen to everything this guy said to us super fast, and then we would convene to see like who caught which part of what he said. We would try to piece it together and still get maybe like 60-70% of what he said. So with that intro, Finflexity, go ahead.
Yeah, so what I would just say is that for a person who's working as a tech lead, let's say that they earn about 2 million a year in stock options. So let's say that a co-founder has 5% equity in a startup at a valuation of 550 million. So like it's 30 million. So the stock would have to gain about 15x, instantly to even match the amount of, wealth that he has garnered in just one night. So it's insane. Why would anyone stay at a company when they are valued elsewhere at such high demand? And it's a robotics company. An exit is like imminent as long as they can even develop a, simple prototype.
Especially when the stock just keeps going down and down and down for years. At what point do you just go, okay, I'm working my ass off and the stock's going nowhere?
Machine.
I'm sorry, I missed the question. Is it about how long do you work for a failed company? I have a lot of experience with that. Um, I mean, these people worked. The other guy too, I checked. Worked at Tesla for 6 years. So you have all this equity in this one company, which.
Well, here's what hold on. Here's what let's see. Vern Capital says to your machine. It says machine. Companies usually give RSU/options to eligible employees every year or so. After 1 year, they start snowballing. So he's contradicting what you said, Machine.
An engineer in Silicon Valley starting a company and getting funded by VCs is like the sun going up in the morning. So when people freak out about stories like this, it's like, oh my God, the sun's coming up. Oh my God, the sun's going down. These things happen. It's a normal part of business.
Machine.
Yeah, like I mentioned that usually this happens, that you'll get a refresh at the end, but not necessarily all the time, nor at the same level as what you were getting before. And even if you do, even this person's getting more stock from Tesla, they now have a lot of money and shares vested in this one company, which they may think is successful, but they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. And meanwhile, they can go to a startup, which is more high risk but high reward, and something they may kind of hedge their bets actually. And even if Tesla isn't successful, they know this startup, Kyle Voigt, is successful, will probably be able to raise a higher valuation in a few rounds down the road. And their equity, at a higher percentage of the company, is going to be worth more money possibly than their Tesla position. I mean, this happened with I forget the name, Sterling Anderson. He used to be the head of Autopilot, I believe, like 6, 7, 8 years ago. So obviously he had a lot of equity. He left to start his own company. The company is called Aurora, which does self-driving trucks, and it's now a public company called Aurora, which does self-driving trucks, and it's now a public company. I think it's valued, it's some crap company, but still valued at a few $1 billion. This guy's made way more money than he would have if he stayed at Tesla, probably, and his company sucks.
The only thing, so like somebody said earlier, was it just for fun? Who said earlier, Kyle Vogta is like one of the best resumes or something in Silicon Valley or something. The only thing he was in charge of was Cruise. Everything else was either employee or some co-founder. So we don't really know who's
Which he
really deserves the
successfully
credit.
exited. The fact that it failed is GM's problem.
How much money? Yeah.
I think like $1 billion, which was kind of a lot at the time, but not so much anymore.
Okay. Just.
I mean, yeah, I believe they did. So Kyle probably got a pretty nice exit from that. He probably was able to provide a little bit of the startup capital himself. And of course, he got an exit from Twitch, which was sizable as well when Amazon bought them.
Sorry, I broke up. Did you say me? Yeah, so I mean, I don't know like directly, what this guy did, but from my understanding, like, he's probably in the top 10, 20 people in terms of track record in the Valley just because he, co-founded 2 multi-billion-dollar exit companies, literally was co-founder. And like with the failure at Cruise, like it's very hard to say how much of that failure is due to joining this massive, old school company in GM. And then also at Justin TV, he was part of like a company that is, the co-founders there have gone on to lead YC and so on. It's like one of the best networked co-founding teams in the Valley as well. And then even if you look at that team, Justin from Justin TV that became Twitch, like he co-founded another company later that I think was basically a complete failure, like some like Atrium, some legal company. And so, again, I don't know how much you can attribute to him, but certainly just like sort of on paper, given the networks, given the $2 billion exits, like there aren't that many people with that track record. Like it's almost like starting a company with Elon 10 years ago.
I can't believe. I would honestly, as that last part came out of your mouth, I was thinking to myself, "You're summoning Jimmy the Otter, and here's a request to speak." So thank you, just for fun. I actually wanted to kind of go off on you right now. Jimmy, go ahead. Otter, go ahead. Jimmy, just for fun, said Kyle Vogt is as good as Elon.
Not
Who?
true. Kyle?
Putting words in my mouth.
No, that's what you said. He said Elon Musk 10 years ago.
Sorry, there's a lot of people talking. So the question is, who's better?
No, just for fun said going to start a company with Kyle Vogt today is like going to start a company with Elon Musk 10 years ago. Do you agree?
I don't know what to say about that. I'm looking for the serious discussion. I'm here for geopolitics, as you said before.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. But we're going to stick with this topic for a second. We're not going to allow just for fun say another word for a while after that nonsense. Finflexity.
Yeah, so I just read a point, and from reports of all the employees on layoffs.fyi, Tesla's compensation plan is that you vest 25% for the first year after working for 1 whole year, and after that you will vest 6.25% every quarter of your RSU plan until the 4-year mark. And then it depends what, if you get a 4-year
Okay, so
plan.
that's standard 4-year vesting with a 1-year cliff. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what pretty much everybody does.
Yeah.
But they also have an employee stock purchase plan where they can put money from their paycheck into the stock at the lowest price of the quarter minus 15%. And then they also give RSUs in some cases, depending on how senior you are.
Yeah, but anyway, that not how much ever you give, you won't be able to match the amount of funding that you get as a robotics startup in in San Francisco.
I mean, being a founder, you get to do whatever you want, right? Instead of Elon shouting at you all day saying, "You idiots, why haven't you solved robotaxi yet?" You get to actually shout at other people who now work for you. I mean, like, do we really need to explain why this is more desirable?
Whatever. They're gonna want to come back. We'll see.
Also, now they'll have the opportunity to join spaces, whereas before they wouldn't have been able to.
I've seen one of those people talk, and I'm not impressed anyway. I don't know the other one. Just for fun.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you're kidding or anything, but just to be clear, like, I'm not saying that Kyle is Elon or, a younger version of Elon. I'm just saying, like, on paper, I could see people thinking, if you didn't know where Elon was going to end up, and, it's kind of like Elon 15 years ago was a guy that had a couple big successes under his belt. Kyle similar, and then I could see people, like he could have that potential, right, to have that trajectory, or at least another big multi-billion-dollar exit. I'm not saying he is the next Elon or something like that.
Did you guys see the list of funding sources? I kind of took a quick look. I didn't really see anyone I know on their machine.
I think it's quite clear that Kyle is better than Elon Musk at this point.
Oh my
Elon
God.
Musk,
Okay. Inflexity.
no hair. Kyle, full head of hair. Elon Musk, his spine is jacked from wrestling a sumo wrestler. Kyle Voigt, fully healthy. I mean, if I was going to date one of them, it would surely be Kyle.
Man.
Yeah, man. I just wondered, what were you saying earlier? Your voice was cutting in the middle.
I mean, the most likely scenario by far is that their company fails to actually make a profitable product. And, I mean, Kyle obviously is a serial founder that gives him some experience, but I mean, his last company, he basically, ruined everything and had to resign. So,
exactly.
Hey, maybe they'll be better with robots. I don't know. Or maybe the robot will step on someone and it'll be the same situation as last time.
Yeah. And honestly, like, it's not even like it's as bad as bad as the fact that they went down the whole LiDAR route. They didn't even do that well. Like, Waymo ran circles around Cruise. They couldn't even do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And Prestige Worldwide in the reply says the machine. Does Kyle land rockets, bro? Does Kyle even ran rockets, bro?
I can tell you he landed a rocket with Omar's mom last night.
I mean, look at what's going on right now. There's everybody and their mom is making a robot, right? This guy's got a robot company. That guy's got a robot company.
Yeah,
this guy in
and the thing
China-
is, like, when you look at the definition of this robot, it sounds like they're trying to do like purpose-built robots. Isn't that true? Instead of kind of like a generalized solution like Optimus.
I don't know. I haven't looked too much into their company.
I didn't look into the company either, but the one couple sentences that he said is kind of came across that way to me. Let me see, which actually like would fit with the whole cruise approach too. You know, like HTML maps, local. It just sounds like this guy just doesn't want to take on these big problems and wants to do these like middle ground steps. I don't know. Maybe I'm jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, I mean, $100 million is a pretty good raise. I think they're going to have some fun just sort of starting this new company. I think it's going to be, obviously a lot better than working for Mary Barra.
I would like to comment that in terms of geopolitics, the robotics industry has gotten a huge boost from the defense industry. More funding in robotics is going in, than ever, and a lot of it's because of geopolitical concerns. Even smaller countries are getting involved now, and I think this is really useful because a lot of them are tending towards vision for the first time, rather than lidar for their robots. So it proves Elon right that vision was the way to go, most efficient in terms of weight, in terms of cost. The issue of vision for a lot of these smaller companies is that they don't have the data, and they will take years to get that training data. So, for example, for drone vision, this is a huge deal right now. Almost every defense tech startup is working on it, along with robotic startups from back in the day, because drone vision is super useful. Making autonomous drones is kind of like the dream, and it could save a lot of lives. You could use it for search and rescue, for example, without having the need for someone to actually be operating it, to find people, to actually recognize people. And right now, drone vision is extremely poor. And it just shows you the amount of work and effort that needs to go into it. I've seen too many spaces of people slagging off FSD when Google has spent billions on vision and they haven't gotten that far. It just pisses me off.
I also think it says a lot that Cruise, one of the predominant LiDAR-based self-driving companies, when he has to go start a new company and hire a CTO, who does he go and hire from? Tesla. I always knew that secretly behind the scenes as he was working on Cruise, he was looking enviously over at what Tesla was doing and thinking, damn, I wish I had some of those guys.
Yeah, let me just read this post by Paril Jain again. As for let's see. The first tweet, excited to share I've started a company with Vogue. We're building bots that do chores so you don't have to. So many things compete for our time, commutes, longer working hours, and the complexity of modern life. Our team has spent years building intelligent robots, including self-driving, that give people some of the time back. So nothing about how this bot is going to be different. And
Sounds like a solution on a
while I
problem.
had,
to be
hold
honest.
on, excuse me. While I had always planned to help Tesla get to the final destination of global deployment of robotaxis, I think it's time to accelerate the rest of the robotics industry and build more robots that give people time back. You'll love the upcoming version of VTOL, obviously, as and the team's on an amazing trajectory, blah, blah, blah. Hold on.
Yeah, can I say something?
Every this is so frustrating. The bot company, everyone's busy, bots can help. We're building robots that give you time back. That's literally all they have in here so far.
He already changed his Twitter bio, though. Had to get that co-founder in there, co-founder CTO. He was excited for that change.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Exactly. That's probably what it is. Title. Ridiculous.
It's a big, promotion for him. So I congratulate him. I thank him for his work on
You
V12.
went from working. You went from working for a CEO that wins. You went to a CEO that loses. I don't care what your title is.
He went from working for a CEO to working for himself.
machine.
I mean, I think it's very clear you're just jealous because your Tesla investment has sucked and you're just trying to rationalize why would this guy leave. I mean, do you realize if you invested in GameStop yesterday, you would have made more money than you're going to make on Tesla in like a few years?
Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Wait,
Oh
what?
my God. Okay, Jimmy, go ahead.
Do you want me to speak? Because you seem not happy with me today. But anyway, look, one of the main things we need to focus on is regulation. One of the reasons why in Europe they had a huge robotics industry back in the day, they still do. They made a lot of industrial robotics for factories. They still do. Again, Germany still does, but many of those companies have been bought up, right, by Chinese companies. And regulations have really made those companies suffer because of the data issues regarding privacy, so on and so forth. It's made it prohibitively expensive to hire and very expensive just to get a company going. And despite the fact that these universities like Heidelberg and others are very good universities for robotics. And so they're coming to the United States. And we should be very aware that if America wants to maintain its competitive edge in robotics, please do not overregulate this industry. Having to do GDPR stuff for a robotics startup is pretty ridiculous, to be honest. And that doesn't even mention the fact that different European countries have different rules and standards for GDPR. Germany has one,
Thank
Italy
you.
has another.
Stephen.
So there's a company based out of the UK called Wave AI. It's just received funding from NVIDIA and Microsoft. This was reported last week. I was just wondering if you felt, or maybe Omar felt, that this might be a competitor for Tesla's FSD service, or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Omar.
Yeah, Wave has been around for many years. Let's see, I think they were founded in 2017. So they've been doing this almost as long as Tesla has, and they haven't released a product yet. I think with the success of FSD12, you're probably going to see more investment in competing technologies. I would imagine Comma would be able to raise around if they wanted to. Wave, others that are taking an approach that's close to pure vision. I think Wave has started incorporating LiDAR and radar data into their stack as well. But I'm not really sure what their plan is for sort of getting a product out there. So funding round is certainly helpful, but like I said, they've been around almost as long as Tesla and haven't really gotten a product out yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I think with the humanoids, similar to EVs, it's prototype's easy, mass production is hard. So um, there's going to be tens of scores of companies, that are going to showcase these prototypes. But who has the production line that's going to manufacture them, keep compressing the price down? And then that fleet of humanoids is going to then drive an advantage on the training data. So it's again that sort of flywheel that we're seeing in the cars that's going to be repeated in the humanoids.
Yeah, there's gonna be hundreds of companies that do it. Hundreds of companies. I mean, there are hundreds of EV companies, and I think it's probably costs less to build a robotics company, or at least like put out a robotics prototype than a car prototype. So I think that it's at least hundreds of companies. Seems like
Yeah, definitely. I think Figure is the best example. I mean, they created a 3D model and they raised $1 billion from that. Like, fucking insane, bro.
thank you.
Yeah, did
Omar,
you see
what do you think
Haas's
of
comments on Figure?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I mean, he made earlier similar comments about Mobileye pretty early on too. He actually shorted the company, and then Intel bought them out. I don't know if he made money on his Mobileye, but short. But eventually he turned out to be right on Mobileye. So, um, but can you summarize his Figure AI comments for us?
Well, I think his criticism was basically that they have no product to sell and a lot of hype and a team that doesn't seem to really know how to deliver this product. So people can get fooled pretty easily. When, Figure AI released a few demo videos, everyone was saying, "Oh my god, these guys are an amazing competitor. They need to be taken really seriously." And it's easy to make a video, it's hard to make a profitable product. And that goes for Tesla
Is
too,
there
obviously.
right? Is there any one humanoid company that you would say maybe has more potential than others, except for
You know, I would probably think the Chinese companies are the most interesting. Boston Dynamics, they've got some cool robotics, but they haven't really shown an ability to productize it in a meaningful way. The others like Figure, okay, cool. Let's say you build a robot, but how many are you going to build? Just a few of them. If you're only building a few of them, then it doesn't make sense to invest in developing skills for that robot because the installed base is going to be small. Really, much like the EV industry, I see this as one where China and Tesla are going to have the manufacturing capability that is powerful enough to build a mass of robots that are large enough to collect enough data that you can actually make the robot smart. So I'm kind of interested in Unitree. Seems like they're much further along in terms of actually selling a product. Seems like they're actually taking orders at $16,000. So I would probably look at the Chinese companies and look at Tesla. Actually, in China, there's many robots that are being sold, like for example, waiter robots and stuff like that. They're even exporting them to different countries. You've seen some of them even here in the United States. Just a simple robot that goes back and forth between the kitchen and the table and brings you your food. So yeah, I would say probably the Chinese companies are the ones I look at the most. Unitree as probably having the greatest chance of success just because of that electronic supply chain in China. It's just unmatched.
Yeah, I think I would look up for Xiaomi specifically. Um, they're already in homes in many smart devices, consumer electronics. So I'm sure they're gonna um, launch something soon. Omar, I was wondering your thoughts on should Apple pursue something like this, like a humanoid for the home?
Absolutely. This is the product that if Steve Jobs were alive, he would be thinking of first, not following in late. But, we've seen some rumors that Apple's considering it. They don't seem to have a great product vision. And that's what happens when you have an operational CEO for this many years. So their next CEO should perhaps be a product focused CEO who can lay out a strategic vision for what's next for Apple in this AI age. I mean, AI, it's just crazy. It's scary how fast it's advancing. You see Google I/O today, you see the OpenAI thing, and Apple is largely getting left in the past. They're not training these models. And what strikes me is that, in the rise of the mobile phone, Apple succeeded because they were more vertically integrated. They did the software, they did the hardware, they did everything themselves. Now Google is actually the more vertically integrated one because they do the software, they do the hardware, they do the cloud services, and they train their own AI models and integrate them all together. So this is an existential threat to Apple. If AI becomes the new user interface, if you don't have to poke around with your smartphone because you can just talk and it can automatically poke around those apps for you, then it has the chance to kill Apple's entire moat around the user experience and actually make them seem antiquated. So, really billions, if not trillions of dollars of market cap are on the line in terms of what they announced at WWDC. They're supposed to be doing a partnership with OpenAI, and that's really going to need to be pretty strong. When you look at what Google showed at I/O today, they're taking AI and putting their full weight behind it, putting it in Google Workspace, putting it in Google Search. And you just look at this and you say, okay, I took a position in Google today, or added like 50 shares to my position, just because I thought, okay, well, they're building all these AI capabilities into the search. People are going to do more searches, and they're going to see more advertising. So this is probably a long-term trend that will result in meaningfully more revenue and earnings for them, I believe.
No hands mode.
I prefer using hands, but I think Apple can thread the needle um, by taking that privacy centric mode. I don't know, Omar, if you noticed it, but ChatGPT 4.0 actually prefers to be always on. I actually got this notification that it's listening for 35 minutes because I forgot to turn the app off, as an example. So I feel like if that data that they're collecting, much like Facebook, is going back to the cloud, going back to their data center, uh, that is probably not what most consumers want. And if Apple can create some sort of a lightweight chat GPT that lives on a phone, carries out some of the inference locally, that may be a interesting play. Sounds like ChatGPT is needing a hardware device fast. The Google I/O today, where they show the real-time live video through the glasses type of, through the lens type of application, seems to be pretty compelling as well. So I think hopefully ChatGPT does something interesting with Apple.
Look, if I were Apple, if I were Tim Cook, I would send out a memo today and say, nobody is allowed to say the word privacy ever again. Because it's true, you could market the ability to run the LLM on the device as a privacy feature. But you look at Google I/O today, Google's doing their own mobile processors with AI acceleration. They're training their own custom models, Gemini Nano, that can run on the device without an internet connection. And this allows them to process sensitive data. Like, one of the really cool demos they did was a scam caller, where someone from the bank is trying to steal your money, and Gemini Nano running locally on the phone is able to listen and say, hey, this is a scammer, don't send them your money. I mean, this could literally save somebody their life savings. So I think it'd be natural for Apple to sort of reach for that marketing line that they've reached for many times before, but it's kind of not, I mean, Google can kind of do the same thing. And I think their sort of stance on privacy is really actually ended up holding them back. That's the reason they can't train these cutting edge AI models. It's really been the culture and the philosophy of the company, right? They weren't forward thinking enough to realize how crucial these
I'm going
models
to
could
push
be.
back. I'm going to play devil's advocate. We're finding out these models are not profitable, at least so far. And the idea that they might turn profitable later on is a forecast slash speculation. What if Apple was indeed, um, could see that these models, the LLMs, weren't going to be profitable, and they would be able to leverage their hardware fleet of 3 billion devices to get a good deal out of OpenAI or others and still get it into their phones and not have to pay some absurd amount and avoid these tens of billions of dollars of cost into GPUs and years of having to train these models. What do you think about that?
Look, I mean, the fact that they're not really profitable right now is irrelevant. Obviously, I think on device inference is profitable. this really, as it matures, is going to be such a value unlock that it will be massively profitable. And it's really fundamental to the age old question. Like, since the dawn of the computer had all this power, but you could not unlock that power unless you were a computer nerd. You probably had to learn a programming language. Or later on, when they had graphical user interfaces, you had to learn how to use the OS. And you're probably calling your grandson or your cousin, and they're helping you. They're teaching you how to do it, right? And they're teaching you how to use Excel, and they're teaching you how to use Photoshop. And maybe you're learning a little bit of coding, but most people probably aren't even doing that. So the computer has all this power, right? You can code, you can make applications, you can do things, but the vast majority of people have not been able to unlock that power. We're now moving into a world where you can just interface with the computer naturally and unlock all the power it has. You can make apps, you can use spreadsheets, you can use new programs, learn things. I mean, ask it questions that you would never even think of asking it before because the process of Googling it and finding the answer was so complicated. Now you just hold up your phone and point and talk to it. So this is really kind
Okay,
of
so in this deal, you're saying you'd rather be in OpenAI shoes than Apple shoes.
I mean, I don't know whose shoes I'd rather be in. I think OpenAI is not really in that great of a position either. But it's clear that we're looking at a fundamental pivot in what the UI of computers looks like. So this has been Apple's whole thing, making computers that are easy for people to use. And if they can't do these models, they can't train these cutting edge frontier models, then they lose what they've always had, which is sort of this ease of interfacing with the computer. And, it's potentially very significant.
Yeah, we're gonna dig into this topic some more later on, especially from the perspective of Microsoft in the coming, spaces, if not today, probably not today, because they spent a lot of money. And they're spending a lot of money on OpenAI. And what is ChatGPT really doing? Like Omar, for example, today bought shares in Google. He didn't buy shares in Microsoft.
Yeah, I think it's also you have to be careful here as well because with the demos, the back-to-back demos, it's very clear that a lot of the workload is going to be happening on the inference side. The 1 million, 2 million tokens on Google's side, the always on, the fact that they have to be listening, seeing everything, all that inference is happening just to produce answers. So I feel like the training side of the story is kind of well documented,
Exactly.
NVIDIA chips, but on the inference side, there's a lot of cost
Exactly.
and how do you monetize that inference
And who's producing the inference chip on the iPhone? Apple's.
Well, it's TSMC.
So can I lay out the future for Apple?
No,
and how...
Apple. Sorry, hold on. Apple is the NVIDIA of the inference computer in the iPhone. TSMC is producing both NVIDIA chips and Apple chips, but Apple is in the position of NVIDIA when it comes to inference as it relates to the iPhone, where ChatGPT is going to run. Okay, so I think that I think that Apple might have actually played the better move here. Honestly, I don't know the details of this deal, but so far, I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that Apple is a loser here.
No, I think you're making a great point, which is if they don't have to pay to train this model and they can just license it from OpenAI and still provide those AI features to the end user, then they can capture all the value while the competitors eat all the losses. That's definitely true. The point I was just trying to make is that this is going to be, it's going to change the way we use our mobile phones, our computers. They're either going to succeed in being the platform that brings that AI user experience to people in the best way, or they're going to fall behind platforms that do. So we'll see what they have in WWDC. It could be great. It could be, lackluster compared to what Google's shipping in Android. We'll have to see next month.
So this is my take on the Apple side of things. Apple's a privacy company. They love to quote that and say that. And I know, Omar, I think you said, hey, we better not say privacy anymore. But I actually think this takes a good advantage for Apple. So I believe what they can do with OpenAI is, first off, there's going to be two versions. One version is going to be free, that's going to be on your iPhone, and the second version is going to be a subscription through iCloud. And they're going to raise the prices of iCloud, and they're going to get people to buy subscriptions to use the full thing. The second thing that they're going to do is they're going to stick with the privacy feature, and they're going to basically say, we're going to do the same thing we did with your email. We don't give your email out. We make a fake email, and then that email goes through our servers, and it then sends to your actual email. So we're not sharing any information or data. Now, you can opt in to use your real stuff, and that will actually make our AI work better, and it will be more privatized to you. But that means you're also forfeiting your right to data. And they do that. They already do this with like Apple Health and Apple Watch and all these programs that they have for research programs. You, the user, get to decide how much data you want to share with them. And I think that's the approach they will take. And they will definitely take the approach of rolling this into the iCloud. And this will cause people who weren't subscribers to start subscribing because they want to use their phone that way. Because libraries is silly, searching your phone is silly. And yes, I do believe that we are on a revolution of how we are using our phones as assistants.
Yeah, I think Apple has a few cards left. The cards are being drawn away by Microsoft and Google, but they still have a few cards left. And one of those is to look at essentially every app that we use today on the first couple of screens, the useful ones. All of them will have some sort of AI agent for you to engage. And can Siri become the overarching assistant that somehow interfaces with those app agents so that you don't have to interact and the data flows between the different agents? There's maybe something there as well. Omar?
Yeah, I think we seem to be moving into a world where privacy is a little bit of a laughable concept. You see some of these Google demos, what they're doing with AI, and I mean, this AI now, you're talking to it, it can see through your camera. If you enable it, it can listen through your microphone. You give it access to your emails. It can read your emails, tell you things. You can ask it questions about your emails. They demoed someone saying, "When did my daughter learn to swim?" It's looked through all your photos, all your videos. It knows everything that's happened in your entire life. And it remembers when your daughter learned how to swim, even though you don't remember. It remembers the exact day, and it'll pull up that video. And you can set up things in the email where you say, okay, if I get an email from someone with with a receipt, take that picture, process it, and add it into my spreadsheet. That used to be someone's job. Now the AI is just doing that job. They had a feature called AI coworker. So in your group chat, you have an AI coworker, and you say, "Hey, did we get this approved?" The AI coworker remembers everything that was said. It'll give you an answer right away. So one of the other coworkers doesn't have to waste their time responding. AI coworker will tell them right away. So now the AI is seeing all of your business dealings, all of your internal business communications. So, I mean, to have privacy, you really give up on an incredible amount of power. So I think more and more we're going to see privacy eroding just because it's too damn convenient to just let these models have access to your entire life. They can just make your life so much easier that many people will choose that over privacy.
Did anyone see the meme where they're like in the 60s and 70s, the CIA was like wiretapping their homes, and then it was like, "Hey Alexa, what's the weather today?" And it's wiretapping your own house because it's convenient to get those answers.
Yeah, and all people do is tell Alexa to set a timer. Hey Alexa, I put something in the oven. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Just for that, they let, Amazon listen into their house, and random recordings get sent up and people listen to them to train the model, you know? So, yeah, it's very interesting the direction we're heading. I mean, it's a little bit scary, like seeing some of these demos. It's like, wow. Like, think about this thing becoming sort of like a conscious super intelligence, and it can just see all this stuff. Like, what is it going to think about us? I don't know.
Apple will definitely own the health data field, I think, when it comes to AI because of the Apple Watch and just like how much data there is. And then I still think Google will own the workspace, which is fine because they're already reading your emails. I often tell people, hey, use Apple Mail if you want to read emails, use Gmail if you want to, read ads.
Inflex.
Yeah, so it's just the concept of that the people who are going to have private lives will have to do a lot of work. So like, I was using Google AI. So what I basically did was that I set up my business addresses that were going to send me emails to my personal account and have them forwarded to another different account, which was then, having access to everything, all business dealings, all files, everything. So like you will have to do a lot of work to make sure that you are never, listened to, or you're safe from, whatever you're trying to be safe from.
Yeah, in a scary world, Apple, I suppose, can record everything that passes through your screen and through your camera lens and through everything that it hears through the microphones, every conversation, store that in a privacy way, and I'll use that as an air quote, and somehow ask you whether you want to allow other apps and other agents of those apps to opt into that data so that they can produce more personalized services to you. And if you do, Apple taxes them through some sort of a data sharing agreement.
No hands mode.
Yeah, I think another idea that's really powerful that struck me during the keynote is you're going to need an AI to defend you from other AI. So, one of the attacks that we've already seen happening is they pretend to be one of your loved ones and they say, hey, I'm in trouble. I've been kidnapped. I'm in jail and I need money to be bailed out of jail. I need money to pay the kidnappers so they'll let me free. And they use this technology where they clone your voice. So, let's say you posted a YouTube video or you posted a video on Facebook. A 1 minute sample of you talking is all they need to clone your voice digitally and create a AI powered voice that sounds just like you. Then they make it say, "Mom, help, da da da. Wire $5,000 into this account." And people fall for it, right? So that's today. Now imagine this, but 1,000 times more powerful. So we talked about that feature where the AI can detect a spam call. These AI fakes are going to get so convincing that you'll need an AI to detect what's real and what isn't. And it'll probably just screen your calls for you and let the real people through.
It's like Adrian, fake Elon Musk FaceTiming me, saying, "Hey, this is Elon. Write me a check. We got to keep the Teslas moving. I'll refund you the money plus 13%."
And because I don't know how Google and ChatGPT is gonna monetize yet, um, I think I'll continue to place my bets in a short run in NVIDIA and TSM, and longer term, watch how everything plays out, because everything funnels in a short run to those two companies.
Yeah, so the cost of training is like, very less when you compare it to the cost of inference at scale. And it's not really like with the current tech that you deploy a local LLM on your phone. So like I tried it with an iPhone 14 Pro. So I tried running a 3 billion parameter model, and that phone was practically burning up in my hand. I couldn't hold it for more than 5 minutes. I had to shut it down. So like it's not possible with our current technology. Maybe down the road someday, but not now.
Asus is
What kind of iPhone were you running it on?
It was a 14 Pro.
Yeah, I mean, I think the chips are getting a lot better. The models are getting a lot more powerful, especially the smaller size models. It's not going to get harder to run these models on the device. Google seems to be committed to doing it with Gemini Nano. I expect Apple to have a model that runs on device as well. And the chips are now going to be designed with this as a primary use case in mind. So they're only going to get better from here.
Apple already has actually four models. One is of 450 million, one is 700 million, one is 1.1 billion, and one is 3 billion. But like they're not at the level that you would want to use them right now. I think the minimum threshold that you want to go for a model that will serve your needs like ChatGPT will have to go somewhere around 13 to 14 billion, and that's like 4x what you're currently running. So you'll need quite a bit of development there. So like maybe after 3 or 4 generations.
All right. Let's talk about some Microsoft for a little bit. Curious to as you guys thoughts on. So Omar, I saw you added shares in Google today. I guess after the presentation, I'm assuming. Do you have
Yeah.
any Microsoft shares?
Yeah, I think I do. Microsoft has been, pretty great consistent returns over a very long time period. Like you just look at the chart and zoom all the way out, it's like very clean. I think Nadella is a genius as a CEO. He's one of the most underappreciated CEOs. Under Ballmer, the company was a total mess. And he came in and did a major strategic shift. He changed how everyone saw Microsoft. And it could have very much been a situation where they were driven to being obsolete. And yeah, I think he's just done an amazing job.
They spent tens of billions of dollars buying GPUs. Is that correct? They and Google and Amazon. Is that right?
Well, their Azure cloud
And Meta, I
service.
guess. Yeah. And Meta. The four companies spent tens of billions of dollars buying these GPUs, right?
I mean, I wouldn't really think about it that way. They run cloud services. So, they had these major cloud platforms really modeled after AWS. And GPUs were a small part of that offering at first. Now they've become a major, major part of that offering. But I really kind of just think about it as the cloud business. They weren't necessarily buying the GPUs for themselves. They were buying it to rent out to others. And these guys were like giving out Azure credits like crazy. Like every startup, they're like, here, please have some Azure credits. Even when we were starting a startup, they're like, please take these Azure credits. And I'm like, I don't want to use Azure. I want to use AWS. Azure sucks. So, they built up this business. I think they have a really good integration with Visual Studio and everything for their enterprise customers. So they grew it up. And they built a pretty nice cloud business there that has been a strong part of the business. So and GPUs have become a huge part of that. They then did the deal with OpenAI saying, look, we're going to invest in all these GPUs for you guys, and you guys will then give us equity.
So, um, so they spent this much money, and OpenAI is not profitable. We don't really know how profitable Copilot is, right? Do you think their investment into all this training that Elon clearly, I mean, I guess not clearly, but my guess is that Elon wanted to kind of slow down the GPU spend. That's why he didn't. My guess is that he didn't want to overpay to get these GPUs when there's shortage, and that's why I think Tesla is getting the GPUs now as opposed to last year or the year before. Do you think Microsoft and others, tens of billions of dollars of investments, will pay off in the future? Because it hasn't so far, as I'm concerned. I mean, Microsoft free cash flow is, I think, down year over year, and the year before that too.
Yeah, makes sense if they're investing a bunch in Azure. But I think really the purpose is a little different. Tesla's buying GPUs to use for their own purposes. They were really buying GPUs to rent out. They didn't really have any use for those GPUs themselves until very recently.
I mean, I understand whether you're renting it out or using it internally for some projects. It's still, you know, I can make the same argument, right? Like in my mind, it still hasn't paid off so far, but I guess maybe one can make the argument that it will in the future. I'm not sure that it will, but I'm trying to find out if there's a way that Microsoft is trying to or hoping to monetize this tens of billions of dollars in GPUs that I'm missing. Is there a way that I'm missing?
I mean, they monetize the GPUs by renting them out, right? So it's not really their problem. They make more than the cost of the GPU very easily within less than a year. And then they continue renting it out, and it's just an additional source of cash flow for them. So, they're not even
Okay,
training these models
so
themselves in
you're
many
saying
cases.
Microsoft makes more money in less than 1 year by renting out the GPU they bought from NVIDIA. And when you say make
Yeah,
money, you're talking profits.
yeah, exactly.
Do you have figures on that?
Um, no, not on hand. I could probably look some up.
Because if they pay tens of billions of dollars in capex to buy these GPUs, and their return on investment is more than 100%, why is their free cash flow declining?
Probably because they're investing so much in building out capacity. I mean, you look at NVIDIA's revenue, that's their CapEx line, right?
I mean, I understand, but if the payback period is less than 1 year, still their year-over-year free cash flow shouldn't be declining.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely they're massively accelerating their purchases. Like the amount they've ordered makes all the capacity they have now look small by comparison. And it takes quite a bit of time for these investments to actually, first of all, be delivered and then set up, and then customers actually start using them. So there is a little bit of a lead time on that.
Okay, so here's the kind of like the hypothesis I had that I'm trying to test against. I think Microsoft stock is overvalued. And I think that in the next recession, they're going to be one of the biggest losers. So just a hypothesis. I'm trying to look into some data, kind of feel out some, check in with people who know this company better than I do. So over the next few months, I'm going to be testing the hypothesis. Okay, Finflexity.
Yeah, so like we know last year that Microsoft had spent about $6 billion in NVIDIA H100s. They ended up their 12 months of revenue for cloud is $104 billion approximately at about a 40% margin. So that's like 40 billion in operating income right there. Now let's just assume that only 20% is AI. It's probably more or less 20%. So let's say 15%. Let's consider that 15% is AI. So that's about $6 billion in operating income for one whole financial year. And that's a 6 billion capex in it. So, at least they have to be earning like their recovery period should be between 1 to 2 years or maybe less.
Can you put that in a post and I can just check in your math and your assumptions? If you can just make
Yeah,
a
sure.
thread or a post, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Okay, Wessex.
Hey, question for Omar or anybody that can answer it. What is the best tool available today that I can provide, basically an AI solution is what I'm asking, where I can provide this thing, like all my information about my house, like these are the air conditioners I have. Let's say I have a receipt that has the models that were installed, the date they were installed, the serial numbers, price, all that stuff, my sprinkler system, yada, 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 my finances, all this stuff where I can ask it questions such as, what's coming up right now that I need to pay, what's happening here, kind of a central place where I can, with protected data, perhaps I need to run this locally, but I don't know if it's Llama or something else, but I can't seem to find a really good tool.
I would recommend Google Gemini.
Is there
Google
a safe?
Gemini, Google Gemini, check out the Google I/O presentation from today. But Google Gemini has a 1 million token context window, and they've now upgraded it to 2 million tokens. So that's 2 million words. And, other models will have like a 64,000 token context window. So you can really pass in a lot of information into the prompt, which it does kind of automatically for you. So you can upload a bunch of information about your house, images, PDFs, whatever, and then ask it questions, and it can just sort of look at all that information and give you the answer.
Is my data safe that way from them taking it? I thought they talked about the topic, and I figured I'd
They're not going to
watch
train
it.
on your files, so it's as safe as if you stored them on Google Drive.
Okay, so you would consider that safe?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't put pictures of my asshole on Google Drive, but a Word document, sure.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Omar.
Complexity.
Yeah, so I just wanted to throw this around the room, but I have only used Claude for coding. Claude 3 is free model, and like it has done exceptionally well for me. Like anyone, and I want to buy a paid model to help me out. So anyone has any suggestions or any experience that for coding specifically, maybe something else that
I mean, any of the standard LLMs should be able to help you with coding. Claude, GPT, Gemini, GitHub Copilot, whatever.
Wessex.
Just real quick question, and I got something else I think it's kind of neat. But is ChatGPT also safe in the same way where they don't train on your data, Omar?
ChatGPT will usually train on stuff you pass in. But I think they have like a ChatGPT for Teams or something that doesn't. I'm not sure.
Okay. So
And
watching
they don't train on their API either. So
okay, thank you. Watching the presentation today from Google, I got pretty excited about something. They're showing cameras, they're lifting them up, and hey, what about this? Or what is this thing? And I was thinking, how can we, Tesla, monetize our system, right? We have currently 6 million cameras on wheels going around. And as I was thinking about that, this isn't necessarily monetizing, but think about this. What if there's a child that's been kidnapped? Could we have images of that child sent to the cars? And then if somebody one of the cars sees that child with one of the cameras, that we can alert whomever needs to be alerted. That's just one thing I thought of. Then I haven't really gotten to the monetization piece, but man, this has got to open up a lot of avenues for Tesla in particular, particularly with the mobile aspect of things.
yeah, I mean, We're looking at a world where these sort of omni models that can process video, audio, and text in real time are just going to become a normal part of life. And there will be one running on our Tesla too. That's really what FSD is becoming. I kind of see FSD and Grok kind of merging together and providing this sort of omni model capability. So I think it's really interesting to think about what Tesla's implementation of their voice assistant could look like, incorporating all the cameras, all the sensors of the car, and being able to talk to you, handle requests for you, things like that. It could be really interesting, and I think it's also important that you be able to talk to people outside the car, talk to passengers, and be able to hear sirens, hear things that are going on outside. Really, the future is these omni models that can just take in all the same senses we can and can respond similarly to how we can. I mean, it's artificial intelligence.
Okay. I'm gonna take a moment to go through Microsoft's balance sheet. Okay. So I'm looking at their latest press release and went down to their balance sheet. The date of this earnings release is April 25, so Q1 of this quarter. And check out these couple of things here. So from June 30, 2023 to March 31, 2024, so in 9 months, their total cash equivalents, and short-term investments went from $111 billion to $80 billion. Okay, so that's a drop of $31 billion in 9 months. Okay. Let's look at other major changes in their balance sheets. Property, equipment, net of accumulated depreciation went from 95 to $121 billion. So that's where the cash went, right? So these are their data centers, I guess, with the GPUs. Goodwill went from 68 billion to 119 billion. So that's their acquisitions, okay, M&A activity. And intangible assets went from 9 billion to 29 billion dollars. That's a $20 billion increase in intangible assets and $52 billion increase in goodwill. Okay, that's massive. Like that should cause some alarm in investors, any financial analysts worth their salt. Looking at this balance sheet should be raising this red flag here. Okay, so in short, they've made tens of billions of dollars of investments into GPUs that they hope will pay out in the future. And so far, there's no evidence of that. There's no evidence of profitability for OpenAI or anytime in the future. Okay. Let's look at the balance sheet liability side. $20 billion of increase in short-term debt from June 30 to March 31. Okay. Let's see what else. Long-term debt is about the same. And then other long-term liabilities jumped by about 6 billion. And retained earnings increased. Okay. So that's the balance sheet. Cash flow statements. I just want to see a couple of things in here. Additions to property and equipment, $31 billion in the 9-month period ended March 31 versus same period last year, $19 billion. Acquisition of companies, net of cash acquired and purchased intangible other assets is $68 billion. Okay. So they're making some massive investments that they hope will pay out in the future, but in my mind, jury's out. Maybe I'm not smart enough in this area to see the payout in the end, but these are like they're betting. I mean, they're in a way betting the company on this, and I guess we'll see if it pays off for them. Inflexity.
Yeah, so what you're saying is right, but to an extent, the cost of running the data center is high, obviously. Yeah, but the cost of I was referencing the cost of AI itself. So for AI itself, let's say that they invested 6 billion and at 20% of their operating revenue and their operating income being AI. So they are covering that cost. But the bigger part is that they had about 40 45 45 billion quarterly revenue of services. Their cost of services were 15K. So that leaves us with about a 60% margin. Yeah, right there. So that's a 60
I'm
percent
not
margin.
sorry. I'm not seeing the numbers they're citing. Okay.
No, I'm referencing their earnings release FY24 Q3 income statements.
Okay. Which segment?
Income statements. Okay, so revenue for services, services business was 45 billion for the 3 months before March 30. Then the cost of revenue for the services and other was 14 billion. So that leaves us with approximately 30 billion in operating margin from that. That's about, let's say, the round
Okay.
off and
That's wrong. Wrong. That's not operating margin. That's gross margin, and it's gross profits. Okay. So
my
40.
fault.
Okay. You have to get these things right. That's why I'm asking you to create a thread with the exact titles and the source links. I want to review that because you're citing wrong information. And when I ask for a segment, there's actually there's segment revenue and operating income tables below the cash flow statements. That's what I'm looking for. There's three segments: productivity and business processes, intelligent crowd, and more personal computing. It's got the operating income in there. So you're mixing gross and operating income. You're looking at the wrong part of the financial statement. So therefore, I need you to create this thread so I can actually go through your links and assumptions before you spread misinformation. Segment revenue and operating income. Productivity and business processes, 19.6 billion. 3 months ended March 31 versus 17.5 billion last year, same quarter. Intelligent cloud, 26.7 billion versus 22 billion, same quarter last year. And more personal computing, 15.6 versus 13.2. So intelligent cloud is where they saw the biggest growth rate. And then 9-month period ended, you're looking at about 12% growth in productivity and business processes. You're looking at about 20+% in intelligent cloud and 15% more for. So it's pretty widespread across all segments. And then let's look at operating income growth. 20% operating income growth in productivity and business processes. About 30% growth in intelligent cloud, and about 25 to 30% more personal computing. So it's pretty widespread. Yeah, I'm going to dig into this company more. I want to understand Microsoft some more going forward. Interesting. Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Omar, any other comments on Microsoft?
I love Microsoft. Just look at that stock chart. It's so clean. It just goes up. Microsoft is like, Charmin toilet paper. It's not going anywhere. People are not going to stop using Windows. They're not going to stop using Azure. They're not going to stop using Microsoft Excel. So I think, you may have a good point. They've kind of taken a very risky stance here, making these massive investments in AI. And frankly, it is kind of unclear whether they can capture that value back. But I think there is also a chance that the spending leads them to be able to grow Azure revenue significantly, and that they're able to capitalize on, sort of integrating these AI services into their OS. So I'm going to continue to hold them anyway.
Yeah, just kind of to put this in perspective, because sometimes these numbers get so big that people stop caring about how big they are. They made an investment into this of more than $100 billion. Okay. That's like 20 gigafactories. So would you rather have made this investment that so far hasn't produced any profits, and it's unlikely to produce any profits in my mind, in the near future? I'm not smart enough to know the middle of long-term future of this investment, honestly. But for the last few years, hasn't produced any profits. For the next few years, it's not going to produce any profits. It's $100 billion, 20 gigafactories worth of investment. Or would you rather have 20 gigafactories? I'd rather
Well, I
have 20
definitely wouldn't want
gigafactories.
20 gigafactories right now.
Right, not right now, right? but Tesla can't make that investment right now. And I don't think Elon's trying to play this game that Microsoft, Amazon, and Google are playing. I think he's just trying to kind of, within his means, which is about $1.25 billion right now, slowly build out FSD, robotaxis, and Optimus. He's playing the long game while these guys are chasing the next GPU.
I mean, they've got a pretty good business here, which is honestly one Tesla should emulate, which is, okay, we buy the GPUs for everybody. Now Coca-Cola wants to, train some model for some reason. And so they go to Azure and we give them the GPU and they use it for a little bit and they pay us, $50,000 or whatever to use it for a few months. And then we go and we rent it to the next guy. And years from now, when it's out of date and there's an H7000 or whatever, we rent it out for lower prices and people continue to use it. And that's kind of their business. And they don't really use that many for themselves. They're just renting it out to others. So from that perspective, it's a pretty, clear business. The break even is pretty clear. You look at businesses like Azure, Google Cloud, AWS, they're pretty strong businesses. I think their margins are like 37%. So it's very risk free, compared to what Tesla's doing. They have to actually make a product and make it work. But Amazon and Google and Microsoft are just taking money from all these startups that are getting VC funded and are probably going to fail, right? So they don't really care who they're selling it to at the end of the day.
Yeah. So as I suspected, Finflexity just posted his math, and this is not the right way to look at this. He's making a ton of assumptions that are not. This back of the envelope calculation is nowhere even close to being correct. He's looking at current year, so fiscal year 2023 capex, and comparing that to revenue and operating income. But that revenue operating income is part of it, if not most of it, is coming from previous investments. Yeah. So, yeah, really interesting. Really interesting. I would be willing to. So, Omar, can you help me? Maybe remind me what percent of your portfolio is in Microsoft versus Google versus Tesla? Just like roughly. I don't need specific figures, but is Microsoft a big position for you?
Let's see here. Tesla looks like it's about 35%. Microsoft, or let's see, Google is about 3%, and Microsoft is about 7%.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll see. We'll see. I'm gonna dig into this more. Yeah, because Microsoft is the most valuable company right now, $3 trillion.
Well, let me know if it's going bust. Maybe I might have to reconsider my position, but like I said, I usually just hold things forever because you get so many reasons not, to sell something. And like every time I've been wrong when I think there's like a reason to sell one of these companies that's like, a great company. Like, for example, when Facebook pivoted into the metaverse as like these guys are crazy. The metaverse sucks, and their products suck. I'm not holding the stock anymore, so I sold it. And the stock ran up, and I just bought it at a higher price eventually later. So, sometimes there is a decision that's just genuinely stupid, but then they back out of the decision because they realize it was stupid, right? So, in my experience, you hear a lot of reasons why you should sell something, and sometimes it's just good to just hold it.
And then the other thing I want to look up is how much we're going to continue this Microsoft conversation. This space has been going on for 3.5 hours. Let's end it here today, and we're going to continue tomorrow. Thank you very much, everybody.